Oh, ha? Bigyan mo yung ano. Bigyan mo yung
Kaya nga. Maldita.
baka ibasura yun. Sayang. Bigay na lang sa BBM.
Ano pa picture tayo ulit sa kagita?
Oh. Ay, mas maganda. Mag-picture tayo na nakakalo tayo lahat. Oh, merese.
Dali yata yung Maricel.
Marami itong mga merch si Alvin na pinamimigay. Hindi ka nabigay, pero sabihin, hindi kayo niya, napahalaga.
Kuya, ano ka? Uy, ikaw talaga. Panira ka talaga.
Grabe influencer, matakot ka.
Kaya nga, nakakatakot pa naman yung magsalita kasi
Matakot ka. Grabe influence niyan. Ingat kayo.
sige, magkalo tayo.
Kalo. Picture tayo ng kalo.
Bring him home, Duterte. Hoy, nagpapaluto ako minsan ha. Kasi hindi ako masyadong marunong mag-ano.
Uy, gusto ko yan.
Hindi ako masyadong, ubos na. Ano lang, konti lang, hindi marami. Pang ano lang ko lang, hindi, panglagay ko lang ano, mga 5 lang.
Dito?
Correct, correct. Gusto ko yan na explanation. Totoo naman.
Parang dito na siya nakatira. Dito siya pa nakatira sa...
Tali picture tayo na may ano, may cup. Guys, ano? Kaya kano.
Alvin, sabi ni Ging, last year nakadaw sa Hong Kong. Sa March 18, di ba?
Hindi nga.
Pupunta ka o hindi?
Hindi, ma'am.
Sigurado ka hindi.
Oo, bakit pupunta ka sa?
Mamaya, totoo yan.
Hindi.
Ikaw na may malihin yan.
Uy, bunga ka nito.
Kala ko, lasete.
Sige na.
Balita daw.
Tara na, tara na.
May balita daw na hindi yan nagsasabi sa amin. Tara, picture tayo may kalo. Tapos, Alvin, hingi sila ng cup. Alvin, i-message si Alvin for the cups.
Kaya nga.
Hoy, pahingin isang kalo nga. Hindi pwede ang kalo ko. Oy, wag uy, pucha. Pahingin kalo, bawal ang kalo ko.
Oh.
Kasi
Kunin mo na yan, bilis na.
lagi, bawal, masirati ko to eh. Mawala ng lahat, wag lang. Without them, we have no updates.
One, two. Yung kalit mo. Japan.
Okay, photo mo na, photo po. Photo. 1, 2, 3, and... Alright, na po. Pwede ano sa video ko, sir? Oh, no problem. Video. Okay. Okay. Duterte. Sige. 1, 2, 3. Duterte! Ako nung bilang. Okay, anong bilang? Okay, 1, 2, 3, go!
Duterte! Bring him home! Duterte! Bring him home! Duterte! Bring him home! Duterte! Bring him home!
Okay, isa pa siya sa camera. Okay. Ready? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, and go!
Duterte! Bring him home! Duterte! Bring him home! Duterte! Bring him home! Duterte! Bring him home! Duterte! Bring him home!
Parang nangalan ako eh. Ito ba?
Sino?
Sisigaw lang, hindi sumigaw tayo ng mas malakas pa. Yung nandito sila sa Tiger, grabe. Diba? Meron pa silang ganong tumugod dun sa DS. Yan.
Just message out.
Pero wag yung jacket na yun.
And he will provide
Wait!
hot cup.
Wag yung jacket. Dilapin mo yung walang ganyan.
Miss Marilo, siya yung nagpo-provide ng mga ice cream. Meron siya ice cream from
Regan.
summertime.
Regan.
Fish and chips. Kasi, bakit mo ginagawa? Dahil,
Mahal namin si Biagi. Mahal namin ni Robin si Biagi.
and, mahal mo din naman
Kami.
Duterte supporter.
Of course, my God. Deep inside of my heart.
Okay, tama na.
It's full. It's full. It's full. My heart is full with love. Basta supporters si Biagi.
Ginagawa mo ito everyday, di ba?
They know that.
Meron pa ba kayong mga buhay outside the street? No, seriously, because we see you here every day
Yes.
from the Philippines.
Yes.
May buhay pa ba kayo?
Pero, buhay pa lang niya.
Yung buhay nyo from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m.
Yeah, ganun. Ano, yung payong ko na
Parang ano, amoy yung susunod.
Meron? Wala, uy. Uy, ano yung kalam? Kalam? Ah, oo nga. Ang ano lang
Hindi
amoy
ko
mo?
sinabing na amoy na susunog, hindi nila malalaman
Ang amo lang,
nasusunog na yung
ano ang amoy mo,
very
no?
helpful.
Ang lakas ng pang-amoy mo, ba?
Malakas talaga yung pang-amoy ko. And then, tsaka very helpful talaga.
Oo, yun nga, oo.
Maudin, Alvin.
Ito lang nilagyan ko eh. Pero marami akong white
Hindi, ano,
Marinig natin yun. Wow! Kaya mo naman. Ayaw kasi
Sige na, recover.
ikaw talaga.
Picture pa rin ako dyan. I feel so much. Mag-vlog pa sa Philippines vlog. Dito, proud ako to show off ang Duterte.
Sana ginawa yung
That's why I'm
click na. Nag-link to link.
Nag-log in pag yun.
Dili, nag-iwa siya duha ka account na pa same name, di ba na pwede?
Oh.
Ah, same name? Nakatong Marilo, di ba?
Pero bakit ano, Regan, basi ka na pag profile pic na kung ano mo gamay.
Dili eh. Ano na siya?
Man naman kay ano, Madam Ruby, pa naman i-try good. Nice kay go.
Pero tanaw na ko, for example, try doon ako, bika na profile pic na ko niya para,
Kung gay niya na ha, kay pang profile pic, nilin kayo. Kay Madam Ruby, gi profile pic niya.
sabi, kanibaw ka ni ganun, kung ano na angle, na dako ka ayo. Dapat gamay lang eh, para,
Try mo.
ha?
Try daw profile pic.
Buda ko lagi ni, dako kayo ni, tanawon.
Alam mo sa ko.
Na, tanawa, din gusto ko ka ng, yung una ani ragyapon gang o, yung ani ba?
Ah, medyo...
O di kayo.
Dili siya.
O di kayo siya dako.
kuan.
Pero portrait gihapon.
Ay, okay ra.
Uy! Adin, ano? Oh God! Kasi Adin, ano ka din yung bakbet? May sumimino ka na tugod na pagkaon mo.
Gag, manito sa alig yung be. Mas mahal mo. Mars! Dito Mars! Ano yung anig ko?
Okay, 1, 2. Lumayo siya. Pwede yun siya.
Sila siyang paso. Jamie,
Jenny, Wanda, oh, bakit?
kailangan natin ng ano, ng bala ng kalan.
Pala ng kanyon?
Kalan.
Ako ka lang.
Paputukin ko dyan. Wala, naubusan ng kalan. Sabi ko sa ano ni Maribita, dala siya ng bago. Kasi hindi naman yung kalan, nakalimutan. Anong hanap mo? Di, ano sabihin ko kayo?
Guys, tingnan nyo guys, oh.
May, no?
Ayun, dyan. Ay, hindi tayo nakabitbit ng tubig. Hindi, ang ato, dira, sa plastic.
Ay, naman eh.
Ganyan sa ano.
Gang, parang ito, no?
Ano yung sige?
Or, may... Or kani.
Ano yan? Ang ginawa, sige na.
Kanino mo, okay nino?
Ang ginawa, sige po. Balik mo. I think kanina. Ayun.
Jamie! Naubusan kami ng ano.
Kani. Ay, marag di mo kayo sa side gown? Ay, kani. Di ka?
No, okay ni siya, no?
Kana, nindot.
Hello, watching from Cagayan de Oro City. Hello po sa inyong lahat. Mabuhay po kayo. Nandito lang po kami sa labas ng ICC Detention Facility, guys.
Yeah, sabi niya siya magdadala na kami.
Tuloy mo ka?
Shout out from Northern Samar. Hello po sa inyong lahat, mga kababae. Ito po yung action ngayon dito, guys. O, tingnan nyo, guys. Ayan.
Pinoy talaga, ano?
Di ba kahapon isang box? Hindi mo makita?
Santo Niño Cotabato, hello po. Montalban Rizal, Dona, hello. Hello.
Maintenant, je vais...
I will now give the floor to the prosecutor. Please proceed please continue with your presentation.
Thank you, Madam President, Your Honours. My name is Robin Croft, and I will address two topics today. First, I will present on the contextual elements of crimes against humanity. And second, I will set out some of the prosecution's evidence on Mr. Duterte's individual criminal responsibility for the crimes alleged in this case. Turning first then to the contextual elements. Your Honours, the contextual elements of crimes against humanity are established in this case because, first, there was an attack against the civilian population in the Philippines. the attack targeted civilians alleged to be involved in drug-related crimes and other forms of criminality. The Rome Statute crimes alleged in this case formed part of that attack. Second, the attack was widespread and systematic. And third, the attack was carried out pursuant to, or in furtherance of, a state or organisational policy. This policy was to neutralise alleged criminals in the Philippines through violent crimes, including murder. The evidence establishing the contextual elements are set out in paragraphs 71 to 86 of our pre-confirmation brief. In relation to the requirement of an attack, our case is that from at least the 1st of November 2011 to the 16th of March 2019, the Davao Death Squad, or DDS, and/or the National Network carried out an attack which targeted civilians alleged to be criminals. Your Honours have heard from my colleagues how from 2011 until 2016, the attack was concentrated in Davao City. Then, in 2016, when Mr. Duterte became president, he and his co-perpetrators expanded the attack nationwide. They used the national network to do this, which, as Mr. Jeremy has explained, was comprised of state actors, such as law enforcement personnel, as well as non-police assets and hitmen. Your Honours, the locations of the murders contained in counts 1 to 3 of our document containing the charges are indicated on the map on your screens. They include 76 murders, which themselves satisfy the threshold of multiple acts making up a course of conduct. However, as Mr. Nichols has noted, the crimes in count 1 to 3 are representative and emblematic of a larger killing campaign. And the prosecution relies on a range of evidence to establish that the attack was made up of thousands of killings and other violent crimes under Article 7.1. This evidence includes datasets and the statements of documentation actors, the evidence of insider witnesses, expert analysis, and the admissions of Philippine state agencies in their public reporting. I will take your honours through some of this evidence now. During Mr. Duterte's mayoral period, hundreds of civilians alleged to be criminals were killed in Davao City. On your screens is a chart with data on extrajudicial killings in Davao based on public reporting. The data is recorded at tab 116. It shows that between 2012 and 2015, there are at least 274 extrajudicial killings in Davao City. This data is corroborated by DDS insider witnesses. Several DDS witnesses say that they each killed hundreds of alleged criminals while with the DDS. Your Honours can see on this slide quotes from one DDS witness. They estimate that, I quote, between 1,500 and 2,000 people, end quote, are buried at Laud Quarry. The quarry was only one of several places that the DDS dumped bodies in and around Davao. That's at tab 37. This witness said that they personally killed hundreds of people. They described their job as with the DDS as being, quote, just to kill small criminals, petty criminals. Out of the almost 300 people that I have killed, I never actually got to kill a drug lord, end quote. That's at tab 34. This witness's words make it clear that the target of the attack was people alleged to be criminals in Davao. Your Honours, another DDS witness who also killed hundreds of people said that the DDS targeted, I quote, suspected criminals in Davao City, including shabu users and pushers, end quote. That's at tab 58. Your Honours, as you have heard previously, Mr. Duterte has himself publicly admitted that he killed around 1,700 people while he was mayor of Davao City. I quote, "They say I killed 700, they undercounted. Around 1,700, end quote." That's at tabs 10, 10.1, 10.2. This evidence, the data collected by independent organisations, the statements of insiders on the hundreds of people that they have each killed, and Mr Duterte's own admission of having killed 1,700 people while mayor of Davao, all show that the attack was widespread in the mayoral period. And the attack continued to be widespread after Mr Duterte became president, when it expanded across the country. The victimisation expanded, with the hundreds killed during the mayoral period becoming thousands in the presidential period. Your Honours can see a map of the Philippines on the slide. The colours which will emerge show the locations and density of the killings in the anti-illegal drug campaign. Purple dots indicate an area with 1 to 10 killings, while yellow indicates 500 killings. This is how the killings progressed throughout the presidential period. Your Honours, this map is based on data collected by an independent organisation which recorded at least 5,823 anti-drug killings during the presidential period. This data is recorded at tab 104. The data shows that the attack during the presidential period was widespread. As Your Honours can see from the map, it occurred across the country. It occurred over multiple years, and thousands of civilians were killed. Mr Duterte's administration effectively admitted to the large volume of the attack. They admitted that thousands of individuals were killed in anti-drug operations while Mr Duterte was president. For example, in the Duterte administration's 2017 year-end report, which you can see on your screens, the administration admitted that 3,967 drug personalities died in anti-drug operations in the first year and a half of Mr Duterte's presidency. That's at tab 106. Similarly, the Philippine Drug Enforcement Agency, or PDEA, admitted that 5,281 drug personalities died in anti-drug operations in the first 2.5 years of Mr Duterte's presidency. This is at tab 98. These admissions corroborate the widespread nature of the attack. They show that thousands of individuals were killed. Your Honours, in addition to being widespread, the attack was also systematic from its origins and throughout the charge period. The features of DDS operations demonstrate this systematicity during the mayoral period. And these features can be found in our brief at paragraphs 35 to 36 and 88 to 98. Insider witnesses described how time and time again, killing operations followed the system set out on the screen. The same hierarchical structure was followed. As Mr Nichols explained, the orders flowed from Mr Duterte at the top, through a combination of other co-perpetrators, to the handler of the relevant DDS team, and finally to the physical perpetrators at the bottom. The DDS teams composed of police and non-police assets and hitmen who carried out the killings. The features of the killings were also often markedly similar. The identity or whereabouts of the victim was provided to the DDS by an informant. The perpetrators would frequently arrive to or flee the crime scene by motorcycle. They shot or stabbed their victims at close range. The victims were targeted on the basis that they were alleged to be drug users, pushers, or other criminals. And the DDS received a sum of reward money for each kill. When the attack expanded during the presidential period, it continued to be systematic. because it remained highly organised, planned and coordinated. Similar systems to the one I've just described in Davao were deployed during Mr Duterte's presidency to implement the killings. Your Honours can see some of those features listed on your screens. As in Davao, victims were targeted on the basis that they were alleged to be drug users, pushers or other criminals. The process for killing the targets was often markedly similar. First, the victims were identified by state actors as targets and listed. As Mr Jeremy has outlined, high-value targets were often listed on the PRRD list. The targets of barangay clearance operations were often listed on local drug lists, such as local police station lists. Second, targets were killed in the context of so-called law enforcement operations. Police often tried to legitimise the operations, so they would stage a Laban or fight-back scenario to make them appear to have been in self-defence. They would also plant evidence, such as drugs and guns, on the victims' bodies. And third, as in Davao, police and those working with them were often paid reward money per kill. Your Honours, these killings were not random or coincidental. Quite the opposite. Targets were pre-identified, listed, and then subject to operations based on that list. This clearly demonstrates the systematicity of the attack. Your Honours, the last point I would like to make about the attack relates to the evidence of an expert witness who specialises in political violence in the Philippines. This expert analysed data relating to armed encounters between the PMP and supposedly armed suspects. He compared data from before Mr Duterte's presidency to during. And based on this comparison, he found that in the first 25 months of Mr Duterte's presidency, the number of suspects killed by police increased by 590% across the Philippines. And that finding is at tab 68. Your Honours have heard Mr Jeremy speak about Bulacan, a province immediately north of Metro Manila, where Mr Duterte praised the killing of 32 civilians in police operations in 24 hours. The expert witness found that in Bulacan, police killings rose by 1,600% when Mr Duterte became president, and that's at tab 121. The expert also compared data on Bulacan Police's use of deadly force to other countries and cities across the world. He used the metric of police killings per 100,000 population. The chart on your screens shows this comparison, which is at tab 121 again. The data on Bulacan is orange, while other countries and cities are blue. The orange bar on the left shows police use of deadly force in Bulacan before Mr Duterte became president. You can see that with a fatality rate of over 1, it was already comparatively high. The orange bar on the right shows the dramatic increase in killings in Bulacan by police after Mr Duterte became president. The expert concluded that, quote, "The only plausible explanation for such an extreme ratio is a widespread policy of extrajudicial executions," end quote. That's also tab 121. Your Honours, this leads us to the policy requirement for crimes against humanity in Article 7. Your Honours, the attack in this case was carried out pursuant to a policy to neutralise alleged criminals through violent crimes, including murder. The policy was also known as the Davao Formula or Model. Your Honours have heard about the origins of the policy in Davao City and how it was implemented by the local executive government. Mr. Nichols explained how Mr. Duterte, when Mayor of Davao City, established the Davao Death Squad to carry out the policy and kill criminals. The evidence establishing the state or organisational policy in this case is set out at paragraphs 77 to 84 of our brief. As the policy and the common plan were both to neutralise alleged criminals via violent crimes, there is some overlap between the evidence on each. I will set out some of that evidence now while discussing the policy, and then some later while discussing the common plan. The evidence includes Mr. Duterte's many public statements and speeches outlining the policy. It also includes the Command Memorandum Circular, which Mr. Jeremy mentioned earlier, witness accounts, speeches and statements by other co-perpetrators, the high level of coordination between state actors. Sorry, Your Honours. I will start with Mr. Duterte's own speeches. Your Honours, Mr. Duterte made no secret of the policy, as is shown by the references in our brief to his many speeches outlining the policy. He made these speeches as Mayor of Davao, as a presidential candidate, and then as President of the Philippines. One example of a speech that Mr. Duterte made as Mayor was at a meeting on peace and order in Davao in October 2015. That is tab 13. Thank you.
48 hours yung mga nagdi-distribute ng droga sa Boulevard. Giving you 48 hours. Pag nakita ko kayo, papatayin ko kayo dito.
These are Mr. Duterte's own words. I quote, "I will kill you. That's the only formula that worked in my city." End quote. That is tab 133.
Prangka-prangkahan talaga. I will kill you. Kayong na mayor ako ngayon, presidente, yun din ang, that's the only formula that worked in my city.
Your Honours will recall that yesterday, Mr. Nichols played a series of Mr. Duterte's presidential campaign speeches. I want to take a moment to reflect on some of the key features of those speeches, which are at tabs 8, 12 and 14. First, Mr. Duterte frequently said that if elected as president, he would stop drugs and crime in the Philippines in 3 to 6 months. He frequently referenced his experience in Davao, where he admitted that he had killed criminals. He said that if elected, he would order the military and police to do the same nationwide. And he expressly stated that this would entail killing. Your Honours, Mr. Duterte's speeches make it clear that there was a policy to neutralise alleged criminals by violent means, including murder. And Mr. Duterte was not the only member of the Common Plan who disseminated the policy through public speeches and statements. In this video at tab 9, co-perpetrator Mr. De La Rosa addresses a crowd of self-confessed drug addicts in Bacolod City and urges them to kill drug lords and burn their houses.
But on Thursday, National Police Chief Ronald De La Rosa's rhetorics were far from toned down, as he told hundreds of self-confessed drug users and pushers in Bacolod City to kill drug lords.
Mr. De La Rosa made this speech on the 25th of August 2016. At the time, he was the chief of the Philippine National Police. Your Honours, the existence of the policy is also shown by the police directive which Mr. Jeremy spoke about earlier, Command Memorandum Circular number 16 of 2016. This is at tab 112. As Your Honours have heard, the day after Mr. Duterte became president, he appointed his longtime friend and colleague from Davao, his co-perpetrator, Mr. Ronald De La Rosa, as Chief of the Philippine National Police. On the same day, Mr. De La Rosa formalised the anti-drugs component of the policy by issuing this directive to the 180,000 police officers under his command. The circular directed police to pursue the neutralisation of illegal drug personalities. As Mr. Jeremy has outlined, the evidence shows that within law enforcement, neutralise meant and was understood as meaning to kill. Your Honours, the Command Memorandum Circular shows there was a policy to neutralise through violent crimes such as murder. I will now turn to part 2 of my presentation on Mr. Duterte's individual criminal responsibility. The prosecution's evidence on this is set out at paragraphs 5 to 70 of our brief. The prosecution alleges that Mr. Duterte indirectly co-perpetrated the crimes, ordered and/or induced the crimes, and/or aided and abetted the crimes. Today, in the interest of time, I will focus on indirect co-perpetration, and we rely on our brief for the other modes of liability. Your Honours, Mr. Duterte is an indirect co-perpetrator of the alleged crimes because, first, he agreed to a common plan to neutralise alleged criminals. Second, he and his fellow co-perpetrators jointly controlled a structure of power, namely the Davao Death Squad and the National Network, which they used to pursue the common plan. Third, Mr. Duterte made an essential contribution to the crimes within the framework of the common plan. And fourth, he did this with the requisite intent. Your Honours can see on your screens an excerpt from paragraph 4 of our document containing the charges. This sets out the scope of the common plan. The plan was to neutralise alleged criminals in the Philippines, including those perceived or alleged to be associated with drug use, sale or production through violent crimes, including murder. As Mr. Nichols has explained, Mr. Duterte and his co-perpetrators agreed to this plan in Davao City. Photos of the co-perpetrators in Davao City are displayed on your screens. They're a combination of trusted police officers, an individual from Mr. Duterte's mayoral office, an officer from the National Bureau of Investigation in Davao Region, and a lawyer who acted on behalf of certain members of the Davao Death Squad. In 2016, when Mr. Duterte became president, the members of the common plan remained largely the same. They were joined by a further 2 individuals, a senior police officer and a long-time colleague of the group from Davao City, who had worked with the DDS before the jurisdictional period. I will take Your Honours through some of the evidence which shows both the scope of the common plan and the co-perpetrators' agreement to it. In the interest of time, I will address some co-perpetrators and we rely on our brief for the rest. That's at paragraphs 9 to 23 of our brief. On your screens is a photograph of Mr. Ronald De La Rosa. When Mr. De La Rosa was Davao City Police Chief, he developed Tokhang operations. As Your Honours have heard from Mr Jeremy, Tokeng was a blueprint for police to implement killings later in the presidential period. When he was announced as Mr Duterte's chosen PMP chief in May 2016, Mr De La Rosa gave this interview, which is at tab 101. It shows that he wholeheartedly agreed to the common plan.
Patayan sa drugs. Patayan talaga ito sa drugs. Kaya kayong mga drug lord dyan, humanda na kayo at talagang sasagasaan ko kayo.
On this slide is a photo of Isidro Lapena. Like Mr De La Rosa, Mr Lapena was well known to Mr Duterte because he too had worked as Davao City Police Chief. In his case, from 1996 until 1998. In 2016, Mr Duterte appointed Mr Lapena as Director General of the Philippine Drug Enforcement Agency, or PDEA. PDEA is the lead anti-drug enforcement agency in the Philippines. 2 days after Mr Lapena took his oath, he gave a speech to his PDEA subordinates. There is an excerpt from that speech on the slide. Quote, "Under then Mayor, we implemented strict law enforcement against illegal drug activities in Davao City. The President wants to replicate and expand what is being done in Davao. And that is precisely what I intend to do." End quote. That's tab 101. Also like Mr De La Rosa, Vicente Danao was Davao City Police Chief during the mayoral period, in his case from 2013 to 2016. In November 2018, he was appointed Police Chief of Manila Police District, and he told reporters, quote, "If I discover anyone involved in drugs, especially those who distribute or just throw them around, son of a bitch, I will go after you, goddamn. I will kill you. Blatantly, I am saying that. Sons of bitches." End quote. That's tab 96. When Mr Duterte became president, he appointed Vitaliano Aguirre II as Secretary of Justice. Mr Aguirre has also publicly acknowledged the common plan and his agreement to it as a member of Mr Duterte's administration.
Well, which do you want? We build first. We build the prison facilities first, or do we go against these people? Choose. If you're in the Philippines, we will choose to kill these drug lords.
Quote, "In the Philippines, we will choose to kill these drug lords." End quote. That's tab 125. Your Honours, these speeches of co-perpetrators show both the scope of the common plan and those co-perpetrators' agreement to it. Your Honours, the next element of indirect co-perpetration is control of a structure of power. In the mayoral period, Mr Duterte and his co-perpetrators controlled the DDS, which they used to pursue the common plan. There is a diagram of the DDS hierarchy on your screens. As the Mayor of Davao City, Mr Duterte sat at the apex of the formal and city structures. The law gave him formal operational, supervision and control over the police in Davao City. In addition to this de jure power, insider witnesses spoke about his de facto power over police and the DDS structure. Under Mr Duterte were a combination of co-perpetrators from the Davao City Police Office and the Mayor's Office. Together with Mr Duterte, they controlled the DDS teams beneath them. They controlled the will of the DDS perpetrators through a range of mechanisms. And these are set out in paragraph 38 of our brief and include threats to kill and actual killing. To illustrate this control, there are quotes from one witness on your screen. This witness said that when he was first told to kill, he did not want to. But, I quote, "I felt like I didn't have any other choice but to follow their orders. Duterte is the most powerful person in Davao City, and you had to do what he wanted. It wasn't possible not to not obey his command." End quote. This is tab 51. When Mr. Duterte became president, the co-perpetrators continued to control a structure of power. One of the first things that Mr. Duterte did with his new presidential powers was to appoint his co-perpetrators from Davao to national positions in government and law enforcement, which were key to the common plan. And after he appointed Mr. De La Rosa as chief of the PMP, Mr. De La Rosa used his new powers to move other police co-perpetrators into key policing roles. These new appointments expanded the geographic powers of the co-perpetrators and allowed them to create a larger network of individuals they controlled. Your Honours can see that structure of power on the chart on your screens. The co-perpetrators controlled the executive, they controlled the police, they controlled the Drug Enforcement Agency, the National Bureau of Investigation, and the Department of Justice. And they used this control to ensure that their subordinates carried out the plan to neutralise alleged criminals through violent crimes. For example, as PMP chief, Mr. De La Rosa now controlled some 180,000 police officers, who, as you have heard, he directed to neutralise drug personalities. Mr. La Peña now controlled 1,800 Philippine drug enforcement personnel. They used these subordinates as physical perpetrators to commit the crimes. Mr. Aguirre, as Secretary of Justice, now had control of the National Prosecution Service. He used this control to ensure that, except for a handful of low-level perpetrators in notorious cases, the crimes were not prosecuted, and a climate of impunity prevailed. And the co-perpetrators controlled the will of the physical perpetrators. As in Davao City, low-level members of the national network risked losing their jobs or being killed if they did not comply. For example, Your Honours can see the evidence of a police insider on your screens. He said that if his boss did not kill enough people during police operations, he would lose his post and be replaced. I quote, "We were told that there should be 5 to 10 deaths per month. The regional director called him and told him that if there were no deaths or no recorded killings, then he would be relieved of his duty." End quote. That's tab 124. Now on your screens is the evidence of an individual who police suspected of involvement in drugs. He surrendered to police to avoid being killed. The police held his status as an alleged drug pusher against him and recruited him as an asset. They made him kill other civilians who were alleged to be involved with drugs. He said, quote, "I surrendered myself to them. I knew that they wanted to kill me, so I became an asset of theirs." End quote. That's at tab 22. Your Honours, I will now turn to the requirement of an essential contribution. Mr. Duterte made an essential contribution to the crimes within the framework of the Common Plan. And the prosecution has set out 10 of Mr. Duterte's contributions in our brief at paragraphs 44 to 58. Many of these have been discussed in the prosecution's presentations. For example, Mr. Nichols spoke about how Mr. Duterte designed and disseminated the policy in this case, which is point A on the slide. He also spoke about point B, how Mr. Duterte established and oversaw the DDS. I have just addressed point E, on the appointment of key personnel to positions which were crucial to the execution of the crimes. Mr. Jeremy has spoken about point J, how Mr. Duterte publicly named so-called high-value targets who were then killed. And all members of the prosecution have touched upon point H, Mr. Duterte's public statements authorising, condoning and encouraging killing. Your Honours, without Mr. Duterte's essential contribution, the crimes in this case would not have been committed, or they would have been committed in a significantly different way. We can see this in the evidence of low-level members of the Davao Death Squad and the National Network, who said that Mr. Duterte's conduct had a causal effect on their perpetration of the crimes. You can see on the screens, one low-level perpetrator during the mayoral period said, I quote, "I was confident to continue killing people because anyway, we wouldn't be arrested for that," end quote. That's tab 38. A low-level police perpetrator during the presidential period was asked about the impact Mr. Duterte's public speeches had on his team, including when deciding to kill someone. He responded, quote, "It did have an effect on me because it's like I was saying to myself, well, even the president, he himself is ready to do something like this, and who am I?" End quote. That's tab 142. A senior police officer during the presidential period was asked why his police unit started killing in July 2016. He responded, I quote, "Because of the directive of the president," end quote. That's tab 120. Your Honours, from everything you have heard over the past 2 days, there can be no doubt about Mr. Duterte's knowledge and intent. Mr. Duterte meant to engage in the conduct that has been charged in this case. He intended that the crimes would be committed, and he was aware that they would be committed as a result of implementing the common plan. Mr. Duterte knew about the fundamental features of the Davao Death Squad and the National Network that enabled the co-perpetrators to control the physical perpetrators. And he was aware of the factual circumstances that enabled the co-perpetrators to control the crimes. Mr. Duterte knew because he himself established the DDS to kill people. He repeatedly broadcast his intention to implement the common plan nationally if elected president. He made it clear that this would involve killing. Once he was president, he moved his trusted co-perpetrators from Davao into key national positions. And as the number of killings rose, Mr. Duterte persisted with the common plan. He praised the 32 killings in a one-time big-time operation in Bulacan. He publicly named so-called high-value targets. He promised to protect police. And as Your Honours have heard, Mr. Duterte has admitted to many of these things. Your Honours, I will conclude my presentation by recalling 2 items. The first is Mr. Duterte's presidential campaign promise that he would stop drugs and crime in the Philippines within 3 to 6 months. And the second is the spread of killings during the first 6 months of Mr. Duterte's presidency.
I promise you, hindi naman believe yung ibang tao. Sabi ko, I would stop drugs and crime, criminality in 3 to 6 months.
That concludes the prosecution's submissions on the merits. Thank you, Your Honours.
Josh Motach. Thank you very much. Am I to understand that you have finished with the presentations on the merits?
Good afternoon, Madam President, Your Honors, yes, that is correct.
Parce que
You know that you still have some time, right?
Yes, but we've hopefully been efficient, and we have finished now. Thank you.
mais donc maintenant je donne.
Now, I'll give the floor to the legal representatives of the victims for their submissions on the merits. You have the floor. Thank you, Madam President. Our presentation shall be in two parts. I will start with my presentation, and my colleague Andres will conclude later on. And just to be sure, I have 30 minutes. Is that correct? Answer correct. Thank you.
Madam President, Your Honors, we speak today on behalf of the thousands of victims and surviving families who have suffered immeasurable harm under the so-called anti-drug campaign conducted during the administration of the suspect, former President Rodrigo Roa Duterte. We speak for families who cannot be here, mothers who buried their sons, children who lost their parents, the spouses who now raise families alone, and communities that have lived for years under fear and silence, and that continue to bear the consequences of violence that swept through their neighborhoods like a storm. These victims appear today before you not as mere statistics or distant figures or images in report as pictured yesterday by the defense, but as human beings whose rights under the Rome Statute have been violated in the most profound ways. These proceedings relate to what has been labeled the Duterte's war on drugs and Duterte's bloody war on drugs. However, the campaign, as I will refer to it during my presentation, was less about combating the drug trade itself and more about policing poverty and social inequality. As the evidence on the record unequivocally shows, individuals targeted by Mr. Duterte anti-drug operations overwhelmingly came from impoverished communities where social mobility is limited and opportunities are scarce. Drug use, particularly methamphetamine, locally known as shabu, is often more prevalent in such low-income settings where people may turn to substances as a coping mechanism for their harsh living conditions. In these communities, structural conditions, including the absence of adequate mental health services, limited access to quality education, scarce employment opportunities, and the chronic stress associated with poverty, create an environment in which substance use is more likely to emerge. Therefore, patterns of drug use do not arise in a vacuum. They reflect deeper systemic inequalities and long-standing patterns of socio-economic marginalization. The campaign disproportionately affected the poor and marginalized, especially in urban informal settlements marked by high levels of poverty. While the rhetoric of war focused on eradicating drug dealers and users, it was the most vulnerable members of society, those with the least power and resources, were caught in the crossfire. A significant number of the ones killed had little or no criminal history and were often accused of minor drug-related conduct or perceived drug use by the authorities. These were people living in poverty were treated as expandable by a system that failed to prioritize their protection and to address the structural conditions underlying their struggles. Rather than addressing the root causes of drug addiction, such as poverty, lack of education, unemployment, and inequality, the Duterte administration framed the issue as a criminal one, focusing on punitive enforcement over social responses. Mr. Duterte's response was a selective, violent crackdown of the most vulnerable, recasting conditions of marginalizations as grounds for criminal targeting, rather as manifestations of social injustice. Framed on its face as a campaign against illegal drugs, it in reality reflected broader social political dynamics, including the targeting of marginalized communities, the use of state violence, and the deflection of attention from deeper structural problems. Mr. Duterte is charged under Article 7(1)(a) of the Rome Statute with the crimes against humanity of murder and attempted murder allegedly committed between 1st November 2011 and 16 March 2019 in or around Davao City during the period in which he was mayor of the town, and across the Republic of the Philippines during his term as president of the country. The prosecution presented ample evidence showing that each of the contextual elements of crimes against humanity is satisfied at the required threshold for confirming the charges. During the period covered by the charges, the Davao Death Squad and the national network created by Mr. Duterte to commit the crimes carried out an attack against the civilian population within the meaning of Article 7(2)(a) of the statute, as reflected in a course of conduct involving the commission of multiple murders and attempted murders. The victims' accounts of events corroborate the prosecution evidence and show that the crimes they suffered were not spontaneous or isolated acts of violence, but rather a planned, directed, and organized attack against them. The attack was massive, carried out collectively with considerable seriousness, and directed against a multiplicity of civilians. The victims were all civilians. The repeated lethal operations were conducted in residential and other civilian settings. As already indicated, the victims largely came from marginalized communities, were suspected by the authorities of involvement in criminal, often drug-related activities, and together with their families, they were targeted in their homes and neighborhoods. The attack was widespread and systematic, and we refer, Your Honor, to Annex D and E of the prosecution pre-trial brief. The attack was widespread because of its large-scale nature and the number of victims. In this regard, the number of victims affected by the events within the charges is one of the most relevant factors to be taken into consideration for the purpose of determining under the chapeau of Article 7(1) of the statute whether the attack was widespread or systematic. The broad geographical spread of the victimization, combined with a significant number of victims, confirm the wide scope of the attack. As the prosecution has made clear yesterday and today, the instances of murders and attempted murders in the document containing the charges and in the pre-trial brief are simply illustrative of a much broader pattern of victimization. In fact, the actual scale of victimization extends well beyond the 49 incidents affecting 78 victims presented by the prosecution. The prosecution itself referred to thousands of civilians murdered, And we recall here the content of paragraph 73 of the prosecution pre-trial brief, as well as the remarks by Ms. Croft just 15, 20 minutes ago. As reported by Human Rights Watch in a report published on 2022, since 2016, the Philippine police have admitted its involvement in the death of more than 6,200 people in drug raids across the country. In a 2020 report, the United Nations Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights reported 8,663 deaths occurred in the drug war. The Human Rights Commission of the Philippines and domestic human rights group report death tolls that are 2 to 3 times higher than the UN figure. The attack was also systematic, well-planned, and well-executed, following a standard modus operandi. In many cases, it began with an individual receiving a visit or a phone call from an official from the local barangay, informing them that they were on a drug watch list drawn up by barangay officials and the police. In practice, these visits function less as warnings than as a means of confirming the identity and whereabouts of the intended target. As one victim reported, I quote, "A barangay official told my husband to surrender to the police because he was on the watch list as a drug user. He had given up drug use months earlier, so did not go. 2 weeks later, 3 armed masked men wearing bulletproof vests arrived at our home in Manila and handcuffed him. I could hear my husband begging for his life from outside the room. We were crying, and the other armed men threatened to kill us as well. Moments later, my husband was shot dead." End of quote. Survivors, relatives, and neighbors consistently recount that armed men typically work in groups of 2, 4, or a dozen. They wore either police uniform or civilian clothes, often all black, with their face concealed by balaclava-style headgear, masks, baseball caps, or helmets. They carried handguns. As one victim explained, and I quote, "On 6 June 2017, at about 9:45 in the evening, I was at home with my husband, and our children were sleeping upstairs. 4 unidentified men wearing helmets and bonnets arrived at home looking for my husband. They broke down the front door. I started begging them to spare the life of my husband. The men pushed me away. My husband was shot in the chest and fell face down. While lying face down, he was shot 5 more times in the nape and head. The children woke up terrified because of the gunshots." End of quote. Attackers frequently travel by motorcycle, typically with 2 individuals on a single bike. Often a van, invariably white or black, and at times bearing markings associated with police vehicles was also present. They banged on doors and barged into rooms. The attackers did not identify themselves or provide warrants. Family members report hearing beatings and their loved ones begging for their lives. And I quote again from the recollection of one of the victims. 5 masked armed men broke in. We could see him kneeling in a surrendering position. The men grabbed him and slammed him into a concrete wall several times, and then, just they throw him outside. We saw the shooting. We were just there. My father's face was bleeding from being hit, and he was begging them for mercy when he was shot. End of quote. Another victim explained, quote, "My father collapsed to the floor but still tried to move, begging for his life. Yet the man continued shooting him. I couldn't count how many times I was so afraid. We also heard successive gunshots from outside. Later we found that also 2 of our neighbors were killed." End of quote. The shooting could happen immediately, behind closed doors or in the street, or the victims would be taken away by the gunman only for shots to be heard minutes later and the body to be discovered by local residents. At times, bodies were dumped elsewhere, sometimes with hands tied or heads wrapped in plastic. Relatives typically found them after being alerted by policemen or by the neighbors. A victim recalled, quote, "6 masked armed men broke into the house where a small group, including several teenagers, were watching television. The men arrested and beat 2 young boys they believed were drug suspects and then took them away on motorcycles. A half hour later, after hearing from a uniformed policeman, we, referring to the relatives, rushed to a nearby bridge to find their bodies, both with gunshot wounds to the head, their hands tied with cloth. The gunmen were still at the scene, while uniformed police cordoned off the area." Another victim recounted, quote, "A week after his brother was killed, 10 police officers, some in civilian clothes, arrested my other son and took him to the local barangay office. That evening, masked armed men abducted him from the barangay office. Shortly afterwards, his body was found under a bridge a block away. When we found him, we saw that his entire head had been wrapped in packing tape and his hands had been tied behind his back. He had been shot execution style through the mouth." End of quote. And another one, quote, "The body seemed like it was just thrown out. The nails were removed, one eyeball was missing, stuffed by cotton." End of quote. Relatives and witnesses often saw uniformed police in the immediate surroundings of the incident securing the perimeter. Special crime scene investigators typically arrived within minutes. In numerous cases, an unregistered 38 or 45 caliber gun and a packet of shabu were found placed beside the body. And instead of fleeing from the police, the gunman would mingle with them. As one of the victims described, I quote, "On 7 June 2018 in the morning, I was at home when I saw my son coming back from his work on the opposite side of the street. Suddenly, I saw 8 policemen, 3 in uniform and 3 in civilian clothes. 2 of them crossed the street. They took my son and banged his head against the wall. They accused him of selling shabu. He denied. He was then taken to the door of the house. He was shouting, 'Mama, help me!' I took a piece of wood and hit one policeman. Suddenly, one policeman pointed the gun against my son. he shot twice, at the head and at the chest. While in shock, I saw one police officer placing 4 packets of shabu and a gun around the body of my son. End of quote. The same account of another victim who simply recalled, after the shooting of my son, who was only 19, uniformed police showed me his body in the house and a 45 caliber handgun next to his body. I told them that my son could not afford and did not possess a gun, and therefore could not possibly have attempted to shoot at the police. I said he cannot even pay the rent. His sister paid the rent for him. End of quote. On occasions, victims were still alive when found by the relatives and taken to the hospital, where they later succumbed to their injuries. Survivors recount the terror and enduring feeling of still being hunted as follows, and I quote, "In September 2016, a police officer pretending to be a commuter boarded my tricycle. He asked me to pass by the police station. There, I was stopped by a group of men who turned to be police officers. I was taken to the precinct, beaten, and forced to reveal the identity of drug pushers. I didn't know. Later that evening, I was taken to a dark place and shot multiple times. Despite the injuries, I managed to escape and save my life. I still have the consequence of the injuries, and I feel deep sadness, anger, and fear of being catched again." End of quote. Another survivor explained, quote, "They killed my 4 friends kneeling and defenseless. I heard a barrage of gunshots, voices, and one officer saying, 'Let it be. Let's say they fought back and let's leave the evidence.' I lay next to one of my friends pretending to be dead. When the armed officer left, I crowded out of the room and headed towards the edge of the ravine. Holding my chest with one hand to stop the bleeding, I slid downwards and fell to the creek bed. I crossed it, climbed the hill on the other side, and walked toward the highway. There, I encountered someone I knew and desperately begged for help." End of quote. Although the charges concern only the crimes of murder and attempted murder, victims' accounts also reveal widespread acts of torture, ill treatment, and rape. Young people were particularly exposed to torture and cruel and inhuman treatments, including unlawful arrest. A number of victims participating in these proceedings were minor when they were attempted to be killed, and a number of victims participating in the proceedings recount the killing of their nephew, son, cousin, who was under 18 at the age of killing. And this morning, Mr. Jeremy provided the example of Kian de los Santos, who was 17 at the time of his killing. Reported forms of torture include beating, kicking, slapping, blows to the head, electrocution, and death threats. On several occasions, law enforcement officials used arrests, inclusion in the drug watch list, and drug-related accusations as a tool of coercion to perpetrate rape and other forms of sexual violence. In September 2018, a young boy was taken by the police and brought to the precinct. His mother recounted, I quote, "At the precinct, he was repeatedly coerced into confessing a crime he was accused of. If you don't admit, your life will be the price, they threatened him. When he refused to confess, he was beaten with a gun and electrocuted. On the night of 16 September 2018, between 9 and 10, I received a phone call from my cousin urging me to go in a certain location in Manila. What I saw was a nightmare. My son had been discarded like an animal, his lifeless body lying on the boulevard, abandoned like a fish by the roadside. I rushed to the scene, but I was blocked by the police. I was not even allowed to touch or embrace my son's body. Even in death, my son was not treated with dignity. It was like they just threw my son out like a pig. I finally found him at the funeral home where I had to pay to recover the body. I had nothing. I was bargaining as if I were buying fish. In the end, I paid approximately 45,000 pesos to take my son's body for burial. Now I wonder, will justice ever be served?
Excuse me, Counsel, you have 5 minutes left.
Official police reports of these incidents invariably invoked self-defense to justify the killings, despite eyewitness accounts that portray the killings as cold-blooded murders of unarmed individuals. To bolster their claims, the police routinely planted guns, spent ammunition, and drug packets beside the bodies. While these official accounts contrasted markedly with the ones provided by the relatives, they were notably consistent among themselves, typically characterized the incidents as by-bust anti-drug operation, differing little besides the names, places, and dates. The victim was invariably described as a dealer who attempted to sell to undercover officers conducting a buy-bust operation. Specialized local anti-drug units, called Station Anti-Illegal Drug Special Operation Task Units, were usually involved. According to the reports, the victim, after being put under arrest, often uncuffed, allegedly pulled out a weapon and sought to shoot the police. In every case, the victim was killed, and none of the arresting officers were armed. In most cases, the police reporting having found shabu on or near the victim's corpse, and sometimes a gun. Often, after the killing, the bodies of the victims were brought directly to the funeral parlors. Families then had to start their calvary to find the body of their loved ones, and they had to pay high fees to retrieve the bodies. R/50082/25 had to sell the house to be able to pay for her brother's funeral and burial. Sometimes the bodies were instead left on the street or thrown into the water in a plastic bag. I believe it's a good time to stop for the flow of the speech. Thank you very much, Your Honor.
Merci beaucoup, Maître.
Thank you very much, Ms. Masida. The hearing is now suspended, and we shall resume at 2 p.m. Thank you very much.
Hindi. Ato mag Duterte stress? Ay, sa ICC. Ato nakadito. Gusto ko yun. Wala mo na kung sinabing ayaw.
I-confirm mo na yung project. Ang appeal chamber mo sabi nito.
Uuwi siya, pero mamaya kahit na daw. Sabi niya. Kasi baka may tutuloy nila. Kaya nga. Iwanan nga natin. Alam mo? Pag nakapapicture, eh wala pa kasi. Alam mo naman, tayo wala pa nga siya. Mabuburin man tayo. Dalawa din.
Not unless magsabi si Marcos. Sabi mo.
Mamaya eh. Matagal pa man.
Oh.
Hanggang Friday pa yun.
Dito ang rally.
Naghanap sila ngayon ng parang ways.
Doon, sa Duterte Street?
Tatrabaho sila.
Duterte at rally nila.
Kawawa talaga si Duterte.
Nanalo na sila.
Yes, sa Friday, mayroon tayo. Solidarity.
Less na yung Supreme Court.
After na hearing. Bukas sa Duterte Street tayo. Dito, then to Duterte Street tayo. Sa Friday. From here,
Sige, sige. Attorney, may nagkakaroon kung bang ano mo kayo ng ano for possible.
0918.
Oh, sabi mo, alam mo, sige na ulit ulit yan.
again for record ko na lang.
0918.
Ayan, from na. Apat na 7. Po, ang possible po ba 8 p.m. po rin? Mamaya ako matapos. Apo, taon po kami na.
Hindi ang saro.
Okay.
Ano, na-bother tuloy ako, attorney. Kasi sabi mo, tumaba na ako. May hindi na ako kakain ito. Kaya, sabi niya, saan si Alvin? Dito na ako sa
Alvin, mag-picture mo ito.
sige.
Ako nag-trend eh.
Sa ano? Hindi, no? Palitin, no? Butang hindi mo ito.
Look kayo, Sir Alvin.
Thank you. Thank you, Vido.
Na, guys, hindi na ako nakilala ni attorney.
Hindi man, good sa jacket ang mura ni Sir.
Tambok na tayo ko, guys.
Sa'yo mo na jacket. Jacket ni mo.
Bahalag. Kahit kumakain nga na, ano lang, trending siya, kumakain nga rin siya. Of course, kahit alam mo ba, attorney, sa Attorney Kaufman nag-release ng statement na you are really an icon. Kaya nga, it was really nice daw na to have you around. Talaga? Sabi ni Ate Rizal, yes, talaga. Oo naman. No. Uy, correct nga, attorney. Kasi pinapalo ka daw niya. Actually. Sinabi niya talaga sa sa statement.
Kaya pala yung mga sinasabi niya parang ako nagsasalita.
Ah!
Live po sa TV5, si Pauline po. Kumustahin lang po namin yung second day. Hearing kanina po. Ano po yung masabi?
Isang araw lang.
Sorry, I fell asleep.
Hindi kita mo sa'yo.
Ano yung nabasa niyo sa statue?
Actually, nilay na kung debate man. Inom na ko doon ka paracetamol.
Doon po sa pinag-highlight na Secretary Facebook.
Wala, dahil kami naman nandito pa. Hindi namin alam. Pero since yesterday,
Discussed.
isip na siya ng defense. Banat ng kabila.
Discuss na pagkanaon sa discuss Sir Alvin.
Lamot lang yung mga paulit-ulit. Ano yung nabasa mo na narinig mo na.
Ikaw lang ha?
Sino bang kausap na?
Sige.
Parang wala akong narinig.
Attorney Sal, pinapatanong po ni Pauline kung ano daw yung reaction nyo dahil nabanggit daw po kanina yung pangalan ni Senator Bato de la Rosa.
Kaya dati naman binabanggit ang pangalan ni Senator Batos. Alam po ninyo, yan nakaplano na lahat yan. So, there will be focusing on former president and against also yung so-called.
How are you? Have something. Drink something, bro. Eat.
Yeah, I just ate. I came from inside, so
How was it?
Was interesting. Yeah.
Different point of view, right?
Yeah, different point of view. Yeah.
And what we are standing.
Yeah. But yeah.
Say hi to your fans because you have a lot of fans.
Hello again.
He's
Hi.
back.
How are you doing?
You want to have coffee first before you go back? Are you going back?
No, I have to catch a bus in like 25 minutes. Going back to Antwerp.
Oh, Antwerp.
Yeah. Go study again.
I understand.
Yeah. Maybe I'll grab a coffee.
Go ahead. Help yourself. We have your coffee money, no? Coffee? How my coffee? You make your own coffee.
Bakit? Walang kasong inihain sa kanya. Sabi nila, kasi makapangyarihan siya. No, yun. Totoo yung sinasabi yun. Presidente siya. Pero 3 taon na kayo nakaupo.
Sayang, na late na. Ako pinagbigay niyan.
Sagot eh. Wala kaming ebidensya.
Hindi ka pa malagdavaw.
Kung walang ebidensya, sabi nila 30,000 na pinatay.
Hindi pa ako ng payo ko. Ito na lang.
Kasi wala nang police report, wala nang record, wala nang mga testigo.
Ako ama na. Mas poso na kayo po.
Kung totoo yung sinasabi nyo, bakit lilitisin sa International Criminal Court? Anong lilitisin doon kung walang ebidensya, walang police report, walang testigo? May contradiction.
Okay, Pauline, matapusin ko na rin yung pagkakain ni Atty. Kasi kahapon, dinistorbo ka. Pangalawang best mo siya, dinistorbo ngayon, ha? Thank you po, Atty. Salamat po. Okay, Pauline, yan muna latest dito sa labas ng International Court dito sa The Hague. Actually, kanina, mas marami pa rin kahapon. Pero nakausap natin yung ibang mga supporters, yung organizer, na kumbaga yung iba mas marami daw bukas na pupunta dun sa tinagurian Duterte Street, dun kung saan nakadetain si former president. Pero marami pa rin sila ngayon dito. Actually, kung makita niyo sa Instagram video, meron silang mga merch. Yung cup, kung makita mo yung cup, bring him home.
Sir Paulo
ka. Tapos meron ding merong mga placards. Meron din tayong nakita na parang ibang hindi Pilipino na may mga placards na nagsusuporta kay former president. Pauline, prepared na ako.
Oh, may bitbit ka na.
Yes. German siya. Nakita ko siya. German national siya. Tapos meron siyang dalang placard. Actually, di ko lang nakunan kasi mag-start na yung live kayo. Kaya di ko lang siya nakunan.
Masteral. Hindi po eh. Hindi na ako na kaya ng mag-renounce ako citizenship.
Yes, possible.
Hindi na ko din ako kaya. Oo, pag kayo mong bahato, mag-dual ka, ma-renounce man ka, pagkataon-taon, a year later, maybe later on, ma-apply na po.
According sa nakausap natin,
Minyo ka?
Doon sila bukas sa Duterte Street, kung saan nakadetain, at mas
marami ka sa exam? B1 ka, A2. Maulog.
Tama ka dyan, Paul, kasi
sino?
Prior pa, kahit walang hearing, meron na talagang nag-itigil doon sa
requisition. Sige.
Hindi pa nag-start yung
Pero pwede ka makavote man after.
Everyday, meron na doon na mga supporters
Ano mo si?
parang shoulder support kay Tatay Dito. May nakalagay na
parang ako na as a matter of principle.
Dito lang kami
na parang I don't want to renounce my Filipino citizenship kasi nga makabayan kasi ako pala masyado. Parang maghirap na ako basta sa Pilipino pa din. Iniisip ko. Hindi ko, alam mo, I'm even willing to give up my, the life here is so different. Di ba? Hindi ako masaya sa, do you understand what I mean? Iba pa rin ang nandun ka sa Pilipinas, kahit mahirap, to be honest. Hindi mo man kailangan talaga ng buong 1 million. Oo. 1 million ka per day, hindi ka man masaya. So, dito, ang laki ng sahod mo, hindi ka masaya, malayo ka sa pamilya mo. Oh, kahit ikaw, in-announce man din sa'yo. Ano, Dutch ka na ba? Oo, mo-apply ka na, re-acquire. Hindi ka na mag-renounce pala. Di ba, nag-renounce ka before? And then karon Dutch na ka, so traitor ka sa bayan. Joke lang ito. That's how I see it, ha? Ako,
Anong work ko dito?
Nagtuturo, sir, part-time sa university dito. ano sir, international development, sustainable development, at saka particularly ano sir, about tourism, environment and society. Part-time lecturer lang sir while I'm about to complete my
O yung
masters.
kaibigan mo, nakaaway mo.
Wala na sir, ando na sa Laban, pumunta na sa Austria sir. Ano friend na napakadaldal. Ano sir, ano na yun? Kinalimutan ko na yung nangyari sir. Andun na nga doon. Ano daw? Sinabi daw, okay na daw yung documentation. Hindi ko alam yung proseso. No?
Wala ka doon. Dinanay na nga.
Dahil doon sa tinatawag nila ng Dublin rule na dapat mag-apply ka kung saan yung entry mo dito. Hindi ko alam yung exact details talaga, pero yun yung sinasabi niya naman sa ano.
Sarap ng biko ah.
Sir, Mami Janet.
Kay Mami Janet ka na biko. Oh.
Pagawa ng kaninang umaga.
Wala. Hindi ka ba daw nilalamig kasi parang cool lang yung ano mo. Iba, lamig na.
Parang bagyo lang na.
Parang bagyo lang daw. Grabe si Sir. Si Jo. Grabe na kayo. Kaya nga. Chill na chill. Bukas daw, sunny. 20 degrees daw bukas. Pero hindi natin alam. Sunny pero malamig pa rin.
Ano po ma'am dito?
Meron pa ba daw biko?
Wala na. Bukas, magawa tayo at sa ano. Ubos na gam?
Ubos na daw?
Oo. I-request natin ulit yan kay Mami Janet. Sarapan pala sa ito. Paibahan.
Hindi kasi masyadong matamis. Hindi masyadong matamis, no? Normal lang. Kaya, sabi, updated si attorney sa mga pangyayari dito. Kaya nga,
Grabe sa ako. Hindi nila lamig kahapon lalo. At mas tugnaw di kahapon. Malamig.
Saka nagdi-drizzle kanina pagdating.
oo, may ano.
Ba't 129 na kagad?
Oo, 129.
Also, balik.
2. Di ba 2 ka? 90, oo.
Pareho lang ba? Kasi kahapon mas dos ka.
Oo, alas 2.
Noon mo kami.
Alas 3 kayo.
Hindi,
Natapos.
kanina.
Lumabas ka mga...
12.
Hindi.
Ano?
Mga alauna. Pero kahapon alas 12 kahapon.
Na ano mo, na-witness mo ba yung kahapon na commotion sa loob?
Hindi, ano ba yun?
Ano daw, yung parang nagsisisigaw-sigaw sa gallery ba?
Pinalabas.
Kaya nga.
Kikwentuhan.
Kasi sinasabi daw na, boo, gago, gumaganyan-ganyan.
Kikwentuhan sila maingay. Hindi naman nakakatulog.
Masaan yung kayo?
Wala na. Ayun, binigay ko sa,
Kasi
kababayan ko.
Yung isang seaman kasi wala.
Wala na, yung kababayan
Binigay
ko.
ko ngayong akin.
Paano, wala naman ako.
Wala akong mahinga dyan.
Wala na.
Minsan man,
Bigyan mo na ng Ferrari. Magkano lang naman yun.
Ferrari ba to?
Ay, ano ba yan? Maserati.
Ayoko, pinagagawa dito. Kasi minsan lang silang pumunta dito.
Pero attorney, ano yung overall observation mo so far, day 2 na? Wait lang, i-video ko na lang. Ano yung overall na observation mo sa proceedings before the court, attorney?
Boring.
Boring?
Boring kasi yung presentation, inuulit na lang na narrative nila na based on hearsay, based on allegations unproven, based on many things na imagination,
Yung kabilang panig naman, attorney, sinasabi nila na may laban daw talaga yung kaso, ganito, ganyan.
Kaya nga, based on their imagination, may laban. But considering na yung ICC, correctly efficiency kasi kahit wala yung solution, eh, magtataka na may laban nga sila. Actually, tutulungan. But hopefully, hindi na tayo makarating na try naman ako. Matawa yan. Ganun time, vaccinated.
See, attorney, you think it's highly irregular for the court to have this confirmation of charges hearing, even
Kasi, una, wala silang jurisdiction. Pangalawa, yung isa ng jurisdiction, nasa appeals court pa.
yes.
Hindi, wala pa, it has not been resolved with finality. So, bakit kayo nagbibista na? Wala pa. Baka nare-resolve yung jurisdiction. Meron na kayong confirmation of charges.
Maraming mga Pilipino, sir, nagsasabi talaga na this is just a politically motivated move using the court to advance their political agenda. What do you have to say to that?
Tagal na yun. Ever since, di ba yan ang aking linya sa program? I'm saying that. Kasi ang end goal is to time and to cripple the president. Kasi influencing the president malaki ang following niya. Kaya kailangan talaga i-obliterate ang mga Duterte. Kaya yung impeachment, pagkakulong ng president, as part of the overall plan of the anti-Duterte policies to remain in power. Kailangan i-eliminate siya.
Attorney Sal, how about at the end of the confirmation of charges hearing, yung Filipino legal team ay nandito naman to observe the entire proceedings. What will happen, sir, after that?
Wala, kami nandito para apart from the moral support, kaibigan namin personal sa Duterte, kami nagpunta para naimbita na yung legal team ng pamilya Duterte para tulungan.
Isa lang?
Kasi mula sa po sinasabi ko na yung kaso niya ay Pilipino eh. Pilipino yung mga kaso. Pilipino yung diwa ng mga biktima. Nasa bansang Pilipinas. Ang pangyayari nangyari sa Pilipinas. Ang mga batas na involved sa kaso nito, mga batas natin sa Pilipinas at may Pilipino. Kaya siguro, kasi isang taon na, baka ngayon lang nila na-realize na kailangan kami ng Pilipino. Kaya kami naman, we welcome it. Talaga, bilang mga abogado. Kaya ang ginagawa namin ngayon, is just observing the procedure, listening to people, listening to and taking notes. At mamayang gabi, 6:30, mag-meeting kami with training talk. Pero sa ngayon, social event lang muna kami. Getting to know each other. And after the 4-day hearing, tupo na kami formal. I-discuss na namin. Ano ba kung sa takbo ng depensa, ano kung issue pwede ilatan, kung pwede mag-focus na tayo sa jurisdiction, pagpakin natin ang pagpakin. Para matigil na itong paglilitis. Premature. That's the result. With finality. Yan ang gagawin.
So are you saying, sir, that there will be a collaboration between the Filipino lawyers?
O definitely. Kasi meron ng Pilipino. Kailangan talaga. Combined.
And you will be recognized by the ICC to be part of the
Papakredit ka. There is a process for that. Para pwede na rin kami salita.
Basta yung box na yan. Brain.
Attorney, is there something the Filipino people following the proceedings will fix
what to expect rather from the collaboration of the lawyers?
Well, ang aking mensahe sa kanila, hope for the best and expect the worst.
Do you have a message, sir, sa mga sumusuporta at sumusubaybay sa
Yeah,
proceedings?
that's my message.
Okay. Thank you, Attorney. Mabuhay
Hope
ka.
for the best, expect the worst. At manatili kayo kaninindigan, kalupitan.
Alam ko, kilala ko yung pinafollow ko rin yung lalay ka.
Ang karating
PRD volunteering din.
ang support dito kahit hindi kayo nakikita.
Maraming salamat, Attorney.
Thank you.
Mabuhay ka.
Thank you, sir.
Wala ako
Yung,
kaya niyan. Talagang
Kung ano ko yung... May problem yan.
Hindi pa patapos si Paulo.
Naniwag ako. Ano?
Ano mo? Pasama ko. Ayan ko sa ero. Pag sure. Mamaya na lang. Mamaya na lang. Okay lang yung next pa. Or ang kapit volunteer.
Naman.
Hindi naman kumuha to dito ka. Ay, kung naman ako nagbugaan. Wala lang dito.
alam ka?
Nandito po si Attorney Sal Panelo. Ano siya? Ay, picture. Of course, sorry.
Say, you was yesterday here. Here's not a toilet.
No. The toilet, actually,
You must go in the center.
in the... No, not in the hospital. Nearby, it's a 3-minute walk.
There's a hospital.
Yeah. There's a hospital nearby here.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. No problem. Picture. Kung may gustong umihi, si ano ba yun? Yun o, silang dalawa.
Yung kumusta yung umihi. Kaya Miss Marivic magtanong, sumama lang ako.
All the observation mo sa proceedings.
I will have.
Ano yung overall the observation mo sa proceedings before the court attorney?
Dito sa inyo madam dito.
Boring kasi prosecution, inuulit ka lang.
Hi ma'am, okay lang po. Hello po. Nakakaya naman po. Maraming salamat po.
Ate, saan mo na yan? Ate! Ano daw? 5 euro yan per hour. Lalabas na. Kailangan dyan sa pag-iiro sa ibang nakulangan ang pagkuhan.
Ano yung overall observation mo sa
Ano naman ako po?
Kipitso to ma'am. Kipitso to ate. Of course. Mapicture ko ma'am.
Pinili ko na naman sila.
Hindi. Sabi niya, si Kipitso pa niya. Sabi ko, hindi masyado.
Pinipili ko
Nurse yan. Pwede ba taga-Leyte ka man? Buhol guys. Sorry. Kalimutan ko ma.
Yes, ma'am.
Ikaw pinipili ko lahat ng tao mo siya sa akin, hindi ako kailan.
May soul na kapatid na sa Leyte, pero Biliran.
Mga biliran, layo na yan sa akin.
Ate, yung mga...
Sino dyan? Dylan? Hindi. Yun pa lang.
Sa'yo din mag-discuss sa
Bata pa yan, Ben. Gusto mo ba?
Kaya tanong ko lang naman kung in-interview ka pinyatay. Obvious mo.
Sabi ni attorney sa
Boring. Ang proceedings nila. Boring. Gusto niya, magsigaw-sigaw siya doon para mawala yung boredom. Ha? I-confirm niya. Huwag na tayong mag-ano.
Magmulahan niya.
Hello, $2 million if true.
That's only the
part
tip
we
of
know.
the correct.
The part that
Exactly.
we know. And you think they're not gonna go to trial with $2 million? They were wined and dined in the Philippines.
I think they galit-galit. Ay, tinanong ko pala about yun.
Tinanong ako about it, no?
Nagtatanong siya about Jan. Anong oras na ba?
About Jan?
About doon sa
Marine? Sino yung galit na galit siya?
Trianos. Galit na galit si Trianos.
Kanino?
Doon sa mga Marines.
Ay, anong gagawin niya kung galit siya? Wala siyang magawa.
Nakahabulin niya daw.
Ay, bulin niya. It's him against the Marines? Masyado na sa mayabang, no? Ano yun eh, yung affidavit is already signed.
interview daw yung seaman sa'yo.
Alba, wait lang, may ano lang.
Ay, bakit ito? It's kind of weird.
Paano galit na galit? Ano daw? Paano mo nalaman na galit na galit?
Post na siya.
Siya pa yung may gana magalit?
Trianes.
Asa na?
Kaya nga.
Nandito ba siya?
Hindi ko alam. Saan pamunta siya, no?
Iwan mo na lang po kayo. Iwan mo lang po kayo.
Ayun, ayun.
Hindi na po. Ako na lang ibigyan mo lang. Drop sa upstairs.
Ma'am, nandito pa si Attorney Panelo.
Ha?
Passion na. Pero dapat nalaga.
Kami.
Cornegas. Kita-apat. Oo, pasok na siya. Ite? Nasa.
Picture kami. Paalis na dali. Picture daw kami.
Picture daw. May hawak kasi akong flash na.
Ayan na, ayan.
Dali na daw, ma.
May inantay pa sa akin.
Okay. PRD, yung metropolis. Kasi malapit na din ang balik niya.
Okay.
Jess.
Mas mura dito. Mas mura dito.
From UK. Saan ang picture sa paper? Dito na ano? Pa-picture na kami. Ito mo po.
You go na.
Balik kami na Thursday.
20 minutes.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank
Thursday.
Ini lang sir po.
Ben,
Uma na po ay, umato mo ma? Oy bis to sige.
Ibaribik!
Gani. Nasyak ko ng interview pag
Friday, no?
Friday na po. The same time 9 to 3.
Mayroon sa Duterte sa lahat ng mga
Ihatod din niyo siya?
Ingat.
Bye ate. Travel safe ha. I release you with love.
Amen.
Amen.
Tita.
Alvin, sabihin sa akin, i-release ito dahil
Kaya-
patay na ako.
Sabi ko nga sa kanya din. I release you with love. Sabi ni attorney.
Alvin, i-message kita.
Sige sir.
We'll invite you.
Number.
We'll invite you.
Number mo. Lagay mo.
Ano ba yung sa UK? Yeah,
We go
number ko, okay?
to the hospital and
We'll invite you to go to the Giant Causeway.
we come back.
Yes, sir. Okay, sir.
Thank you sir.
Save mo.
Thank you sir.
Pasyal ka sa amin.
Wow, Northern Ireland.
Tulog sa bahay.
Take up mo?
Yes. Thank you. Ito yung number mo.
Ano ka naman tuloy sa bahay?
Sa Northern Ireland. Ito pag ginaw yan, para man ginaw yun.
Parang dito, init na nga ako. Pwede lang ako dito mag.
Sabi ni attorney sa, Alvin, taba mo no, oh my God, na-bother to na.
Nabother.
Hindi niya ako nakilala. Sabi niya, saan ba si Alvin? Sabi na, dito ako sa gilid niya.
Pero sinabihin niya.
Oo.
Ikaw din. Hindi. Yung makaka-bother kay Ate Panela. Sabi mo, Panela, parang nag-age ka. Sira yung buong buhay. Huwag
Alam
balik
mo,
ng Pilipinas.
tinanong pa niya ako, saan daw yung ano ko, yung best friend ko.
Sino best friends?
May okay. Minsan yung best friend ko,
Pinuntawa yun
update.
sila.
Kung kaya nga magkakaroon. Kaya nga naman. Sana ba yung best friend mo? Gumayan talaga siya. I'm not sure. I don't know really the nitty-gritty of his situation. Kaya nga sabi ko, attorney, kinalimutan ko na yun, oy. Sabi niya, maniwala ka doon.
Ba't siya why is he starting things again? Charot. Attorney, you're starting things again.
Wag naman.
I-confirm nila si PRD. As if naman we're surprised. As if naman we are surprised.
Like yan, sir.
Kaya nga. Oh my God.
Ano lang siya, live sis lang siya. Kaya, si Jovi, nagdadanter, tapos pag nagsabi na yung ano. Pero walang audio yan.
Akala ko nagchismisan niya.
Walang audio lang.
Ini-interview pa naman si Conti, tapos pagayan-ganyan pa yung mukha ko.
Di naman siya pinapasok pag for example yung kabila.
Oo.
Pag nabanggit lang na...
Nasaan si Conti nandun?
Oo, andun nga. Ayun yun, si Cormelares yung mukha, nakita ko na. Si Neri. Dami naman ang binili.
May pabaon.
Kaya nga. Thank you ha, sir.
Thank you.
Ingat.
Din ha, keep in touch.
Of course, thank you, sir.
Pasyal ka sa amin.
Nalaman ko lang ba na po, ma'am? Thank you.
Anytime you're welcome.
Thank you, sir.
Para makakilala mo mga taga-Bisaya. Halos kung 40 families, all Bisaya.
Laban lang. Enjoy ha, your trip. Laban lang po. Thank you, ma'am ha. Sir, thank you, sir, ma'am.
Pero lalabas sila, Panet,
Of
sila,
course.
all the other lawyers here, diba?
Ay, in a couple, mga 3?
What time is it?
2. Almost.
What if paglabas nila tayo na lang nandito?
Yun na yun. Pati magagawa. Yun na yun talaga. Thesis niya kasi ni William.
Ha?
Thesis niya kasi yan. Kaya ano talaga siya, lumalaban siya. Thesis niya kasi.
Malabong, feeling ko may ibang
Ako din eh.
motibo si M.
Sino?
Aldo, charot.
Buwang. Ka dyan. Yung mga ano natin, yung mga kababayan natin, yung mga seaman. Ayan, galit. Yan yung gusto ko sa mga seaman talaga.
Yung mga adik.
Tumaba na yung adik. Yun o, si Conti man yun o. Ayun o, ayun o. Mas malas smile.
Ha?
Si Conti man yun. Exactly, that's the point. You are here. Kasi kung hindi ka mo dapat nandito ka. Ano kung magtrabaho? Legal. Ano ba kanya? Magtrabaho politiko. Diba? Yun sila mga nagkalaban. Ano nga? Gusto ko yung away-away. Bakit sila mga gusto ko? Parang magtrabaho sa
Thank you, ma'am. So, ingat kayo.
Thank you, sir. Mabuhay kayo, sir. Salamat sir, may paglawig.
Salamat kayo.
Laban pa, parang mga dapat mga siberos. Duterte pa lang. Salamat sir ha. Agari, ginoo ko Lord.
Ganyan yung mga help natin. Ay, kawawa.
Tingnan mo, titirahin na naman ako niyan kasi natapik na naman.
Sino?
Titirahin na naman ako niyan kasi natapik kanina. Ganyan man ang buhay. Sige na, laban. Ay, magawa. Eh, di ganun. Ngayon, mapasahin ko na naman itong, tawag dyan, affidavit. Affidavit. David talaga, hindi pwede affidavit.
Affidavit!
Affidavit! Ja, nga nagutawon ka.
Alvin, I have to go catch my bus. Thank you very much. Have a good day. I'll probably message you for the longer interview.
No worries.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
I-update ko lang kayo, nandito po yung crush nyo, ang crush ng mga...
Sino ba yan?
This is live.
Hello!
Okay, ano masasabi mo, sir, sa...
Sir Bilar.
Kunwari lang ba? Ayun, ganyan. Nag-practice nga ako.
No.
Sir, ano po, bakit kami yun nandito ngayon, sir? Kunyari lang, di ba? Ganun man.
Nandito po ako kasi sumusuporta po ako kay the greatest president of the Philippines, kay Rodrigo Roa Duterte. Siya lang po talaga ang taong nagmahal sa taong bayan at sa bayan.
Ba't parang seryoso? Ano yan?
Po ay
Orasyon na kami sorbo.
parang inaantok na ako. Interviewin mo yan. Bakit siya na tumatawa pag nagdadasal? Yan, interviewin mo yan.
Dasal kailan? Uy, sabi ni ano to? Sabi ni love na love daw niya yung mga nag-negative ng comments.
Actually,
Kaya nga, kasi mapagmahal siya, I release freedom nga.
kaya ito boost ko yung ating ano.
Uy, wag mo ako isali dyan. Ayoko talaga. Wag mo ako isali-sali dyan sa ano mo. Criminal court tayo guys, nandoon sila conted on guys, Yung mga... Kaso gusto ko sana silang interviewin. Ayun sila, ayun si Nery Colmenares. Andun si Nery. Andun si Conti. Ayan guys. Nandoon sila sa loob.
hindi po tayo sang-ayon. Kung nabalitaan po kasi namin na marami daw pong mga nandito nakakot galing dyan sa Pilipinas para ipadala dito. Kunyari, ganito sila, biktima sila sa mga drug war, nagkakalikong, nagtanong pa na siya ang presidente. When, alam namin na kayo ay bayad. Alam namin sinong nag-supply sa inyo para makapamasahe kayo papunta dito. Mga walang sino ba kayo para magsabi na ano kayo, biktima?
Hindi ko pakailang sa kuan, sa Pinas.
Sa ano, deserve nyo mamatay. Ayaw mamatay.
Busy ba siya?
Interview sila guys, tingnan nyo. In-interview sila ng GMA. Hala, is that who I think he is?
Kaya namatay yung pamilya niyo sa house. Naging banal. Hindi kayo.
Totoo.
Sino man yung mga dito ba sila dadaan?
Hindi, mamaya pa yan. Stress pa yan. Saan? Hi, ma'am. Kamusta po? Tinitingnan lang namin yung ano. Break time ata, ma'am, hanggang alas... Ay!
Hindi, game na.
Game na nga, alas 2.
So wala kayo bukas, Thursday na.
Doon kami sa Duterte Street.
Bukas. Sige, dyan kami. Ano oras?
Normally, alauna hanggang alas 5. No problem. Yan, si Conti pala yan, oh. Conti, kausap niya si Neri. Ano siya mauba? Kaya, plus 31. 630 plus 3 na 60.
Kuya, doon po si JP. Araw-araw tayo. Sarap talaga pagpapatuloy. Picture nga tayo nila, ma'am, ulit. Paalis na ako bukas.
Welcome.
Ayan na, okay na. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Sige po.
Tomorrow na lang.
See you tomorrow, ma'am. Ganda niya, no? Ganda ng mukha niya.
Andun yun siya kahapon, nag-iikot dito. Sino ba siya? Si Ma'am?
Si Ma'am Pink. Nagpa-picture ka niya mo kilala. Thank you, Web.
Di ba ano siya, newscaster?
Yes, sa Bilinaryo. Nirese na mo. Paibang nadarama, madaig ka.
Ano ba doon? Media lang doon?
Ano? Oo, medyo lang. Wala. Full na pala yung ano ko.
Dagdag ka na ng story. Sabi, tumataba ka raw.
Kaya nga, na-bother tuloy ako sa sinabi niya.
Hindi kasi malungkot.
Hindi, ano, puffy kasi yung ano ko.
Oo.
Tabang-taba na si Sir sa akin.
Hindi mo, sabihin mo siya, sa pagkain dito, sir, hindi mo na.
Kaya
tumataba yung mga ano.
Thank you so much. You're so sweet.
Hi, ma.
Hey, take a picture with you po.
Of course, no problem po. Nag-usap ka pala.
Yes, nag-aarsa pa ako sa Baguio.
Baguio?
Yes po.
Ano, nabasa ko sa ano?
Opo.
Baguio.
Yes po. Thank you.
Nandun naman yung okay naman, ma'am, lumalaban pa rin. Nandun yung mga lawyers sa
Sa loob?
Diyan sa loob na lang. Kaso nga lang, sa pang-media lang kasi dyan, ma'am.
Ay, hindi lang. Okay. Kasi naka-timer. Naka-timer.
Wala, uy, bumili yung babae ng ano. Uy, Jesus, bumili yung babae ng ano gang.
Oh, nagsabi siya. Sabi niya mag-init. Sabi, hindi mo kasi gustahin yung. Sabi niya, water ko, ganyan. Hermes. So nice of her.
Actually.
Kasi marami yung pupunta dito, diba? They need water, they need drinks. So, she volunteered.
Yeah, that's what exactly.
She's in the spirit of ano. So now we can offer water to you guys. Kasi,
Oo nga. Kasi kanina, there's no water. Sige, inom muna ako ng tubig. Galit. Nagyaw-yaw. Kaya nga, nagyaw-yaw, nangaway. Ano ka ba? Nangangaway. Ma'am, thank you, sir, ma'am. Yeah, thank you so much for that.
tapos na ang ano.
Tapos, kakapasok lang ni Attorney Sal. Nakita mo ba siya?
Oo.
Manelo.
No, like I didn't want
Hindi, mamaya pa mga 1 hour from now.
ano?
Are you here for 5 days?
Yes. Yeah. Actually,
You live here?
I live in Utrecht. Yeah.
So tomorrow wala no?
Wala. Most likely doon sa Duterte Street. But the following days, here again, Thursday and Friday.
Diba?
Parang break time nila.
As if 2 days yung naman sa break.
Correct. Totoo. I'll grab some drinks. Thank you, Mama. Ha?
Ay, nako.
Tulungan kita magkarga.
Dito cellphone mo ah. Pag nawala yan.
Ikaw lang. Uwi ka na? Kaya nga, ako pa may alas 3. Diresa ka?
Sundo naman ko kay Peter.
Ano naman?
Wa ko'y sakyanan karon kay na parking palayo kayo. Lingon ako Peter pagtapos ko tawag.
Correct.
Hindi kay Ate Malu yun, ito lang sa akin. Ito para baka magutom pa yung mga kababayan natin.
Onsa.
Meron
Ito sa kubi.
Amin po lang din.
Klase ito naglalaing galit.
Kaya nga, galit.
Wala lang. Grabe, oy. Matindi tong aking partner ay. Galit ay.
Go, Mira, yun. Napula tayo makakain.
Correct.
Ano ka po nito? Bukas meron tayo.
Sa Duterte Street mo tayo bukas?
Ha? So, bakit? Wala dito tayo bukas?
Wala man dito bukas.
Bakit wala?
Break time nila. Paano bakit wala? Break time nga ng court.
Sige. Okay, no problem.
Ang inyong kuhaan dili na ninyo tapos sa basurahan na kayo.
Asan yung yung may statue kayo?
Statue held Israel. Oo. Grabe no, si Attorney Sal. Matalino talaga din siya.
May attorney bang? Ay, naku, mga tatalino talaga yun sila. No.
Kasi biglang sumasakit na naman yung likod ko. Wala ah. Oo.
Sige, basta to. Yan ako, lago.
Ay, siya.
May video sana to. Bagyo, sabi. Makatalita, grabe po, wagas. Duterte! Duterte!
Grabe mo.
Guys, tinan mo guys.
Nag-live na ako.
May mga flag na tayo dito. Oo.
Mag-flag. Ay,
Live muna ako eh.
Uy! Ano oh?
2020.
Baka lalagyan niya ng ano?
Basurahan ba? Ano bang, may mais pa ba? Bili ka daw ng mais ka? Ang sarap ng mais.
Saan?
Hindi ka nakain ng mais?
Hindi, kasi hindi mo kayo bumili.
Ikaw nga ang bumili ka. Ikaw
Wala
man.
akong cash. Take mo lang. Ate
Pwede mong utang.
Mamords kayo, tinan mo. Lubot.
Grabe daw ang lubot mo talaga.
Grabe ang lubot ni Ate Marivic. Uy.
Ba't mo pinakikita?
Grabe naka-firm, no?
Pinakikita mo ang lubot mo.
Nag-i-squat ka?
Opo.
Maganda siya.
Ano ako, nabubuhas.
Kung may mais ka pa daw.
Pabili na kami ng mga SB. Ay, hindi pala pabili. Pahingi.
Ba't hindi pwedeng pabili?
Bakit may pabili? Hingi nga.
Kita man sa live ko yung ano mo.
Hindi nga niya binibenta. Ano ka ba?
Yung lubot mo, grabe.
Uy, bakit ang lubot ko talaga? Mainit pa yan.
Nandito nga sa harapan mo.
BH ko.
Grabe ang lubot. Kaya si Sir Peter, oh. Pag si Sir Peter, oh. Oh, sige. Pag si Sir Peter, oh.
Ano gani, balot ko lang kay karon maubos na. Kay sikit ko ha. Don't
send our tatay video.
Don't video me, I will video you.
Nag-live ko.
Oh.
Nag-live ko.
Sabi ko, saan mag-live? Ako na. Ano yun? Ay, asan ang mais? Ako nang uupo dito, ay, bahala ka dyan. Agawin ko yung trono mo. Ako yan, sakit ng paa ko na. Nagkanda, arthritis na tayo. Nagkanda, arthritis na. Magiging din nakarating.
Coffee is away.
Yeah, coffee is away. Only. Grabe yung ano niya, no, yung panty, no? Bakit ka ako na? Oh. Mini, blah, 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 like story. Ano na naman ang light to? Ano ito? Masakit na ang paa ko, eh.
That's weird. That's weird. It's fine, is it? Oh.
Magkano ngayon? Tanis pa akong kain. Yung ano? Tanduan. Ano ba yung uwi kanya? Kasi hindi ko alam kung sino pang attorney ang aantayin. Dalian mo na. Yung live ko din nawala. Bawdi po. Nag-change career na nga ako ngayon. Sa harap ng telephone. Sabi ko sa'yo mag-change career na ako. Hindi ko pa magkaon. Hindi na. Thank you. Wait lang yung vlog. Live daw. Kahit Toto Alvin to, eh. Change career na daw siya. Oo, Milan eh. Kaya ako nag-live ulit. Grabe, no? So, ano? Oo, kaya ako nag-live eh. Pero hindi ako pwedeng hindi ako ayoko kaya I will live again. So, yeah. Actually, I want to stop my life. What is that for? Wala. Kuha lang. Talaga? Thank you. Grabe, no, Melanie. Ano, oh, yung maganda na ang weather. Kala ko Pinoy. Nahunta na na.
跟墨西哥的，
Ano na.
跟我一个别保养啊。
maliit ang mata. Kaya pala. Maliit pala ang mata.
到街上能上去吗？这样是长点翅膀就事儿。可以啊，它就晒上嘛。再赶快上去就到了，长点翅膀年不年又能飞出来了。这个你一定要满意，老易的。这个老易长点翅膀，老易绝对满意。是吧？来吧，老易。自由的翅膀，你得往上弄啊，翅膀上不去。对，就是上去。
Excuse me.
好了没？可以了。老高。
Our former president. Our president. President. Before. Yes, Philippines.
Oh, Philippines.
Yeah, Philippines. Yeah.
President of Philippines.
Yeah, Yeah.
Inside. Yeah, previous president.
Oh, he's here now.
Yeah, for the court. Yeah, hearing.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's why you are
Yes,
here.
yes.
That's
Anak
yesterday
ako?
we
Pwede mo yun.
First
Dili
day.
siguro mag-anak.
Now
Uy,
second day.
Ano sa?
Yes.
Hindi tayo mong kapag sa
Wala na siguro ano siguro former president.
Yeah, Rodrigo Duterte. Duterte, yeah.
I-video daw long, i-video raw.
Mga turista. Yeah, yeah. Rodrigo Roa Duterte.
Binibi ako ibutang. Bidaw daw.
Ay, hindi ko sila English. Hello. Hindi marunong mo mag-English.
Nagkao? Bago rin nagkao?
Mga turista yun sila.
Turot? Layo pa may gibiyayan? Malayo pa kami. Hindi, kakakainon lang. Salamat. Walang tulungan.
Naman sila pero sana ako Pilipino.
Doon kami nagulungan. Walang tao.
Pupunta na sila. Tourist kasi ang amuang kanang no, nagpasong hotel lang. Pero
our president love the president. No, he loves
London may sa London. Tagama ha. Kung taga Jinsan.
0.5 ulit? Oo. Tapos ulit yung brown. Hindi 0.8 lang, parang cute. Pero kung wala din ha.
Siguro. Ito yung bulsik ko. Sila pa pero ang break wala. Wala lang pagkain. Interview mo daw ang mga TikTok.
Dili man everyday, pero naalit na ako. Doon, ang permit galing nato every month.
Yes, I think every 2 months or every 3 months. Bakit po dito?
Kita?
Sanghaling lang sila. Asa na si Madam Iko? Hindi mo maintindihan kahit anong sabihin. Kung sa akin ba?
Doon mo nung nasa daw matapos?
Alas 3.
Alas 3 daw. Alas 3
啊？正吗？
那上面看不到了。
那你往后去点不是？
No, we are actually here because our former president, Rodrigo Roa Duterte, is being detained already by the International Criminal Court for almost 12 months. Yeah, basically, we are supporters of the former president and we want to show moral support for him in this very difficult time, because we believe that he did not do anything wrong aside from being the best president the Philippines has ever had.
He's one of the best ones.
Yeah, he is not only one of the best one, he is the best president. Yeah, the greatest president we ever had. Yeah. He is a friend of everyone. We are a friend of China because we believe that we need to have foreign relations and friendship with other country. Most especially that we are a developing country. We need to be friends with everyone. And the former president is friends with everyone except by the fact that he did not bow down to the powers external to us, particularly when America wants to take control of the Philippines, you know? Or let's just say not take control in a way that they want to colonize it, but through some forces within the Philippine government that they work with to destroy the Duterte leadership. So, yeah. So we are doing our best. We are doing our best to show our support for him because, you know, this is a product of political persecution funded by foreign powers to destroy the Duterte family or the Duterte brand of leadership. We are very sure that there are some foreign powers external to the Philippines being involved here. He's here inside. No, he is here there alin by himself. Yeah, he's the only one charged of 3 different counts of crimes against humanity with 3 different cases and scenarios. Three different. So yeah, this is what we are doing right now. Like, you know, do anything that we can to show our support for the former president because before he also helped us deal with drugs and criminality, you know, because it has been destroying our society. But for the most part, we people, or especially live here in the Netherlands, we have the access to be here and be physically present when I think most of the Filipinos or majority of them would have wanted to come here, but it's not possible exactly to support him because I think his detractors, those who are against him, use the international community, the ICC, to it's called International Criminal Court. Yeah, it's here. It's this one. They wanted to use the platform of the International Criminal Court to advance their political motivated attacks. You can take some cola. Take some cola. So we come here, we bring some food, drinks, we can have coffee or whatnot, and then for us to help ourselves be here. Yeah. Yeah, you can have one. Or 2 or 4, yeah, it doesn't matter, yeah. You can take one for everyone. Sige, giuhaw sila. Yeah. It's okay. So yeah, that's why we are here. It started yesterday. It will be, the confirmation of charges will be for 4 days. And President Xi Jinping expressed their the China. I think he expressed his position, or China expressed their position during March 12, with respect to what the ICC did to our former president. So. Yes, thank you. Yeah. We are all Filipino. Yeah. We are all Filipinos here actually. We come and gather here. Yeah.
I think one time you were tasked to deliver money.
最后开半是吧？
Si Duterte in-question. It's always
Parang ako yung inaatake ng arthritis ba?
liable ka dito?
Masakit ang tuhod ko eh.
Yes,
Ang
because
sakit.
at that time, you are not in the patrol.
Sakit ang tuhod ko eh. Sumakit ang tuhod ko. Siguro sa lamig. No?
It's always
Siyempre ano lang ito eh.
meeting like a figure. You're the policeman.
Ang sakit ng isa kong tuhod. Ng kanan kong tuhod.
Ano ka? At that time, sa
Kanina ang
encuentro,
dami.
were you a policeman or not in the performance of duty? Meaning to say, kung ikaw ang polis, nakaharap mo ito, nagkabarilan kayo, ano ang sitwasyon mo? Nagtatrabaho ka as a police in the performance of duty, yun. Ngayon, ikaw polis, at that time nagkabarilan kayo.
Thank you. Thank you.
Wala, nakabihap eh.
You're welcome. So, bye-bye.
Ang ina nag-agawan ng mic barilan. At that time, ano ka? Were you in the performance of duty? No. Yan. Ngayon, ikaw, polis ka. May terorista dito.
Oy, Jeros.
May terorista dito. Drug
Sino
addict.
yung Chen Alipores?
Binaril mo.
Kami tatlo lang adir, ang Alipores eh. Lumapit ka nga doon.
Sampung taong patay.
Kami na lang tatlo na dito.
You are engaged in a terrorist. Are you responsible for the killing here? No.
Oo, mala. O sino kang ang dadating pang ano? Sino pa ang mga abogado ka?
You could not have stopped the bullets and you have the right to defend yourself. Performance.
Hanggang sino pang mga attorney nung dadating? Si ano lang, Panilo at saka...
Wag mo ano, sila lahat. Nandiyan man sila lahat sa loob.
Ay, mamaya. Kitang-kita man kay Alpina. Lalabas natin sa sila.
Wire para sa charger. Meron ako. Wire lang, meron ako power bank. Wire lang. Ang charge dito ba? Wire.
Bakit? Ay, saan mo
Cord,
i-charge? Ay, hindi man tayo pareho nga akong Samsung.
Ano ba yan? C-man yan, USB-C ba yan? Alam ko, pero USB-C yan lahat. The same lang yan.
Kunin mo na yung ano mais mo, baka makalimutan mo.
Dalawa. Tatlo ata. Hindi yung isa lang.
Balot dog.
Ha?
Ay, dalawa na lang doon ang mais.
Sige. Dalawa na lang.
May balot pa, eh. Kano yung balot? Sa imuha po, hindi sa kalibo. Para may pakaon pa sa Duterte Street. Pa-sponsor si Madam. Ay, ano bakit tayo high blood yung heart attack niya?
Hello, sir. What is this?
Sweet.
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 Sige
Thank
na,
you.
Citrus inside.
Thank you.
Sige na, para kainin niyo, magbaraha kayo mamaya. Oh, sige na.
Pinagyan niya kami ng ano.
Magbaraha daw kayo. Dalawa kayo doon, tatlo ng balot. No?
Ayaw ko ng balot.
Hindi siya.
Wala ko sa mood.
Isa lang ako. Ginuo ko isa.
Orange chocolate.
Ako pag dalawa.
Tomorrow, you want more? And
Tatlo na.
tomorrow
Dalawa
stay
na.
here, people?
No, not here. The Duterte Street.
Pero ikaw na lang
Where?
magbayad.
In the near the detention facility. You just need to drive.
Please be seated. Veuillez vous asseoir.
George Motor. Good afternoon to everyone. I give the floor to the legal representatives of the victims so that they can conclude their submissions on the merits. You have the floor.
Pattern of repeated operational methods, including late-night raids, forced entry without warrants, victims shot at close range, similar post-incident police reports with consistent narrative of armed resistance, non-Laban, planting of drugs and weapons, and the absence of genuine investigation demonstrates a systematic attack. This pattern is not a coincidence, it is structure. The use of similar operational narrative and particular assertions of armed resistance demonstrate consistency incompatible with isolated acts. Regardless of whether the direct perpetrators were formally identified as police officers, the similar tactics used show planning and coordination involving law enforcement authorities and, at times, local officials. Killings were not carried out by rogue officials or by vigilantes operating separately from the authorities. The police involvement in the killings extended well beyond the cases officially acknowledged as death arising from buy-bust operations. Furthermore, the government's failure to arrest, let alone prosecute, a single police officer for their role in any of the war on drug killings that Duterte has encouraged, sent a clear message that the one responsible need not fear accountability and can act with impunity. There is no evidence that Mr. Duterte took any steps to prevent or punish the responsible for the murders. On the contrary, as his numerous public statements made clear, he discounted the legality of police actions, showing no inclination or intent to investigate alleged crimes. Mr. Duterte encouraged the police to carry out his anti-drug campaign and repeatedly stated he would protect them from prosecution. On 19 July 2016, at a fellowship dinner with his former law school classmates, Mr. Duterte said the police officer could carry out their war on drugs without worrying about being prosecuted. He stated, and I quote, "The president can grant pardon, conditional or absolute, or grant amnesty with the concurrence of Congress. I will use it, believe me," end of quote. During a press conference on 21 August 2016, he also explained that his promises to protect the police was one of the reasons why the war on drugs had become so bloody, and I quote, "Remember, I went in warning everyone. I said it could be bloody because I knew that the police would now be equipped with a certain mindset, that they would be protected by law if they go in and have this, violent confrontation. Because before, they were afraid of these human rights, and a lot of them lost their jobs because they couldn't even have a lawyer to defend themselves," end of quote. Mr. Duterte also warned human rights organizations not to file cases against police and army officers for extrajudicial killings, saying, and I quote, "I would like to say now they will never go to prison, not under my watch," end of quote. This morning, Your Honor, Mr. Jeremy referred to the killing of the mayor of Albuera, Rolando Espinosa, who was killed inside the Leyte prison. At the time, the National Bureau of Investigation determined that the killings were a rub-out of two unarmed prisoners inside their cell and filed murder charges. Mr. Duterte responding, saying that the officers would not be prosecuted with these words, and I will quote, "I will not allow these," meaning officers, "go to prison. I don't care if the NBA says it is murder. Anyway, the NBA and the Department of Justice are both under my authority. I will be the one to answer for it and go to prison. End of quote. On his third day in office as president, Mr. Duterte publicly told police officers that he would pardon them if they kill drug dealers and drug addicts, using these words, quote, "Do your duty, and if in the process you kill 1,000 persons because you're doing your duty, I will protect you," end of quote. Given the prevailing perception of police impunity and the absence of effective investigations or prosecutions, in many cases victims did not file a complaint nor try to initiate criminal proceedings. As one family member of a victim explained to us, and I quote, "We had no hope for an investigation of the police. One of us saw one of the police go inside with an aluminium briefcase. He took out a gun and some shabu sockets and placed them next to the body. I went back to where I was, and I was totally shocked. I couldn't even complain. If we go complain, what is our chance against the authorities?" End of quote. In other cases, victims tried to seek justice. They went to the police, to local officials, to government agencies. They filed reports, they asked for investigation, they begged for answers, but their pleas were ignored, their complaints were dismissed, their testimonies were doubted. In some cases, the very people they approached for help were the same ones involved in the violence. They were left with no path forward. No institution was willing to hear them, no authority was willing to protect them, no system was willing to acknowledge what was happening. The attack against the civilian population was carried out pursuant to a state policy to neutralize, through violent crimes, including murder, individuals perceived or alleged to be involved in drug-related and other crimes. The policy was originally developed by Mr. Duterte and his close associates in Davao City and implemented locally, and then expanding to the national level in 2016, once Mr. Duterte became President of the Republic of the Philippines. Victims support the primary prosecution pleading and submit that the evidence shows the existence of such a policy as reflected in the repeated patterns of conduct, the mobilization of state resources, Mr. Duterte's public endorsement, and institutional tolerance. Mr. Duterte first ran for mayor of Davao in 1988 on a campaign to restore law and order in the city, the largest of the main southern island of Mindanao. At that time, Davao was known as the murder capital of the Philippines. Communist insurgents and government security forces gunned each other down and many civilians day and night on Davao streets and barrios. Mr. Duterte was Davao mayor for most of the years between 1988 and 2016. Local NGOs indicate that squad killings of alleged drug dealers, petty criminals, and street children in Davao City started sometimes in the mid-90s, during Mr. Duterte's second term. The group that claimed to be responsible for the killings was called Suruguan Sakatuan, or Servants of the People, amongst other names. But soon the media, as you have also heard in these days, the media began referring to it as the Davao Death Squad. The Davao Death Squad killed hundreds. Mr. Duterte endorsed the killings as an effective way to combat crime, relishing his Duterte nickname and reputation. His active promotion of the killing of suspected drug offenders led to a sharp increase in such killings during his time as mayor. According to one estimate, amongst the other that you have been shown yesterday and today, at least 1,424 such killings took place in Davao between 1988 and 2015. As you heard yesterday during the presentation of Mr. Nichols, and today during the presentation of Ms. Croft, when confronted with a death toll during his presidential election campaign, Mr. Duterte responded, "They said I killed 700? They undercounted. It was 1,700. As you also heard, Your Honors, on numerous occasions as mayor, Mr. Duterte claimed personal responsibility for the policy of killing drug suspects. Even prior to announcing his candidacy for the May 2016 presidential election, Mr. Duterte was already very clear about his intention to eliminate crime by eliminating criminals, applying nationwide the abusive crime control tactics. As reported in the Sunstar Philippines on 24 May 2015, he declared, and I quote, "If by chance that God will place me there, watch out, because the 1,000, referring to the person killed in Davao, because the 1,000 will become 100,000. You will see the fish in Manila Bay getting fat. That is where I will dump you." End of quote. 3 months after that speech, he renewed his pledge, and I quote, "If I become president, you better hide. That 1,000 will reach 50,000. I would kill all of you who make the lives of Filipinos miserable." End of quote. Mr. Duterte's outspoken vote to embark on a nationwide killing campaign against drug dealers and drug users was the foundation of his presidential electoral platform. During a campaign rally on 15 March 2016, he stated, quote, "When I become president, I will order the police to find those people dealing or using drugs and kill them. The funeral parlors will be packed." Following his election as president, as also explained this morning by Mr. Jeremy, on 9 May 2016, Mr. Duterte continued to declare unequivocally that his anti-drug campaign was focused on killing drug dealers and users. Speaking in Davao on 4 June 2016, he stated, quote, "If you are still into drugs, I'm going to kill you. Don't take this as a joke. I'm not trying to make you laugh, son of bitches. I will really kill you." End of quote. The next month, Mr. Duterte referred to children killed in his drug war as, I quote, "collateral damage." Mr. Duterte and his associates disregarded the most basilar principle of law, human rights, and human dignity. In September 2016, after the then UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon denounced the drug war killings, Mr. Duterte called him a fool, adding, quote, "I will continue the campaign against the criminals. I do not have any pity for them. I don't give a shit. I am the President of the Philippines, not the Republic of the international community." End of quote. In a Human Rights Watch report issued in March 2017, Mr. Duterte's first 6 months in office were labeled as a human rights calamity for the Philippines. Mr. Duterte repeated public statements encouraging the killing of alleged drug offenders were not rhetorical flourishes. They were operational directives. The repeated calls to kill alleged drug dealers and users is indicative of a government policy to direct an attack against a specific civilian population. public statements encouraged lethal force. Law enforcement operations were organized and resourced. The rhetoric of eradication was translated into practice. The scale, coordination and continuity of operations, coupled with public encouragement of lethal enforcement, support the inference of policy. When violence is normalized, repeated, and institutionally defended, as in the present case, it reflects policy. Turning to the alleged liability of Mr. Duterte. The suspect is charged as indirect co-perpetrator under Article 25(3)(a) for committing the crimes jointly with others in furtherance of a common plan or agreement to neutralize through violent crimes including murder, individual perceived or alleged to be involved in drug-related and other crimes. In the alternative, he is also charged under Article 25(3)(b) for ordering or inducing the Davao Death Squad and later the national network to commit the crimes, and under Article 25(3)(c) for aiding, abetting, or otherwise assisting members of the Davao Death Squad and later the national network to commit the crimes. Victims submit that the evidence presented by the prosecution allows to conclude that there are substantial grounds to believe that Mr. Duterte is criminally responsible for the crimes charged. In particular, the evidence shows the existence of a common plan to kill individuals perceived by the authorities as implicated in drug-related crimes. The common plan originated in Davao in the late 80s when the suspect instructed members of the death squad, police officers and non-police hitmen, to conduct operations against the targeted individuals, provided funds and other resources to achieve the aim of the agreement. As already recalled, Mr. Duterte made unequivocal public statements encouraging police and civilians to kill alleged drug offenders. Such statements indicate an intent to use the country's law enforcement agencies to engage in murders. Mr. Duterte was proud of his achievements at the point that he put his method at the center of his presidential campaign. When elected president, he adopted the same method as in Davao nationwide and continued to state publicly and unequivocally that his anti-drug campaign would focus on killing drug dealers and users. Mr. Duterte relied on the support of the police, which he exercised effective control over, to execute the common plan. Their loyalty was reinforced through financial incentives, promotions, and the maintenance of a system of impunity. Mr. Duterte had full knowledge of the crimes. As the Chamber has already heard, on 15 March 2016 in Lingayen, he announced that if elected, he would order police to locate and kill individuals involved in drugs, warning that funeral parlors would be crowded. On 7 May 2016, the final day of the campaigning for the presidential elections, Mr. Duterte made it clear that his threats were to be taken literally, and I quote, "All of you who are into drugs, you sons of bitches, I will really kill you. I have no patience, I have no middle ground," end of quote. Madam President, Your Honors, the loss victims carry is not measured only in the death of a loved one. It is measured in the empty chair at the dinner table, the birthdays that will never be celebrated, the dreams that ended abruptly, and the futures that were taken from them. As one of the victims put it, and I quote, "My loved one was not perfect. None of us are. But he was a human being. He was someone's child, someone's parent, someone's partner. He deserved dignity, due process, and the chance to defend himself. Instead, his life ended without warning, without explanation, and without accountability. For many of us, the moment we learned of our loved one's death was the moment our own lives changed forever. We were left with questions that no one in authority would answer. We were left with fear that speaking out would put us in danger. And we were left with a painful knowledge that the institutions meant to protect us had failed us." End of quote. The trauma of these events did not end with the loss of life. It continues every day. Families were left to navigate grief while facing stigma and suspicion. Many were told implicitly or explicitly that their loved ones had deserved what happened to them. They were made to feel ashamed for seeking answers. Some were threatened when they tried to file complaints. Others were told not to bother because nothing would come of it. Children witness violence now struggle with fear. Parents who lost their children live with enduring guilt and despair. Entire communities still carry the memory of nights filled of sirens, shouting, and uncertainty. Your Honors, the victim's suffering is never abstract nor remote. It remains real, immediate, and ongoing. Your Honors, trauma is not always visible. It resides in the silence of the ones who are afraid to speak. It lives in the hesitation of a child who no longer feels safe walking outside, and in the constant fear of families who still look over their shoulders, wondering whether they will be targeted next. For the victims, the confirmation of charges is not merely a legal step. It is a recognition that their loved ones mattered. It is an acknowledgement that what happened to them was wrong. It is a message that they have not been forgotten. These proceedings offer something they had been denied in years: hope. Hope that the truth will be established, that the one responsible will be held to account, that future generations will not endure the same suffering. Justice cannot restore their loved ones, but it can restore dignity. Justice can affirm humanity. Justice can help them begin to heal. Madam President, Your Honors, for the purpose of the confirmation of a charges hearing, the prosecution must demonstrate substantial grounds to believe that Mr. Duterte committed each of the crimes charged. Victims submit that the evidence presented by the prosecution meets this evidentiary standard. The confirmation of all charges is not only legally warranted, it is essential to the integrity of international criminal justice. The evidence before this chamber establishes reasonable ground to believe that crimes against humanity of murder and attempted murder were committed in the context of a widespread and systematic attack against the civilian population, and that Mr. Duterte bears individual and criminal responsibility under Article 25 of the Rome Statute. Your Honors, the victims have waited years for this moment. They have been silenced, stigmatized, and denied justice in their own country. Today, they stand before you with the hope that justice, long denied, may finally be within reach. This court is their last refuge, and today, on their behalf, we ask this chamber to affirm that their suffering matters, that their rights matter, and that the rule of law extends even to the most powerful, by confirming all the charges against Mr. Duterte and committing him to trial. This concludes my part, Your Honors. With your leave, I will give the floor to my colleague, Mr. Andres, for concluding our presentation. Merci beaucoup.
Judge Motoj, thank you very much. Maître Andres, you have the floor.
Madam President, Your Honors, I am Gilbert Andres. My colleague, Ms. Masida, earlier submitted that Mr. Duterte's anti-drug campaign disproportionately affected the poor and marginalized. What were the conditions of the victims targeted by Mr. Duterte's anti-drug campaign? How poor and marginalized were his victims? The victims targeted by Mr. Duterte's anti-drug campaign were from low-income, high-density communities. In an urban setting, this meant that some victims live in an area of about 69,000 persons per square kilometer during the relevant period. A typical floor area of the house of a victim in these high-density communities was about 6 square meters. For some victims, their house was as small as the area of 2 tables in this courtroom. The victims' houses were typically made up of wood, used tarpaulin, plastic, light materials, and some broken hollow blocks. Any material that they could scavenge and utilize. As the victims lived in high-density communities, their neighbors knew them very well. The victims lived in close-knit communities. The victims' close-knit communities meant that they immediately knew if a person was an outsider to their community. And any traumatic event that happened to these victims in their close-knit communities was known and whispered throughout their community. As the victims were from low-income communities, to survive poverty, their houses were homes to multiple generations of their families to conserve their meager resources. For Filipinos, especially from low-income communities, their family is not just the nuclear family. It is not just the husband, the wife, the children. Their family extends to the grandparents, the lolo and lola, and the siblings of a spouse, the brothers and sisters. The breadwinner of the victim's family was usually the husband, the father of the children. The victims either worked as daily minimum wage earners or as wage earners below the prescribed daily minimum wage, or as part of the informal economy, such as a vendor. The victims worked if there was work available to earn for their family's survival. But most of the victims would not have completed their education, nor have the proper training to secure stable jobs as part of the formal economy. If they were fortunate to be employed as minimum daily wage earners, in the urban setting, this amounted to about 500 Philippine pesos per day, or approximately about 8 euros per day during the relevant period. But for most victims, the minimum wage was really the maximum that they can hope for. The victims only hoped to earn at most about 8 euros per day. And for a family composed of the husband, the wife, and about 2 until 4 children, 8 euros per day is meager. There was also a cultural expectation for the breadwinners to help their elderly parents. The other spouse sometimes augmented this meager income by being a vendor or by taking temporary jobs. And if both parents were outside of their home, it was the extended family that took care of the children. Your Honors, the specific data may vary from victim to victim, but the victims hope that this data give the Chamber a picture of their conditions under Mr. Duterte's anti-drug campaign. The already marginalized and vulnerable conditions of the victims exponentially multiplied the harm that they suffered, and they continue to suffer, which leads to our next submission. What were the grave effects and suffered harm of the victims, their families, and their communities resulting from the crimes charged against Mr. Duterte? Mr. Duterte's drug war campaign targeted the very humanity of the victims, of their families, and of their communities. In Filipino, the indirect victims expressed this in one sentence: "Inalisan kami ng dangal. We were stripped of our dignity." How so? First, Mr. Duterte publicly dehumanized the victims of his anti-drug campaign. This dehumanization of the victims was used to justify their eventual murders. On July 25, 2016, during his first State of the Nation address before the Philippine Congress, Mr. Duterte declared that, and I quote, "But human rights cannot be used as a shield or an excuse to destroy the country, your country, and my country." End of quote. What was chilling was that this portion of Mr. Duterte's speech garnered the most applause from members of the Philippine Congress and the public gallery. On August 17, 2016, during the 115th Police Service Anniversary at the Philippine National Police Headquarters, Mr. Duterte declared to the Philippine National Police that for those allegedly affected by drugs, and I quote, "And it has not only affected millions, but a lot of them are no longer viable as human beings in this planet." End of quote. On August 26, 2016, Mr. Duterte declared to a group of Filipino soldiers he visited in an army camp that, and I quote, "Crimes against humanity? In the first place, I'd like to be frank with you. Are they humans? What is your definition of a human being?" End of quote. These public speeches of Mr. Duterte served to condition the Filipino people on the excuse for the murder of the victims of his anti-drug campaign and how the murders were taken out, brazen, execution style. These public speeches of Mr. Duterte were emblematic of findings that atrocity crimes were often preceded by the process of dehumanizing the identities of others to justify the crimes. Second, the murdered victims were dehumanized by how they were murdered. During their actual murders, the targeted victims were summarily accused as drug users or pushers without the benefit of a judicial process, just like the one before this chamber. The victims were then murdered inside their homes or within their own close-knit community. The victims who were murdered inside their homes were murdered in front of their family, their spouse, their children, or their parent, especially in front of their mothers. Some of the victims were forcefully separated from the physical clutches of their family members, protecting them from the direct perpetrators of Mr. Duterte's anti-drug campaign. This was what happened to the son of a victim in the early hours of a Thursday. At that time, this victim, her son, and her son's wife, who was pregnant and nearing delivery, were preparing to go to the hospital when 6 or 7 people dressed in black and who had guns suddenly entered their house. As recounted by this victim, and I quote, "My son kept repeating, 'Mama, don't leave me.' So I blocked the way. He pleaded again, saying, 'I will come with you, just don't kill me. Mama, don't leave me.' 4 officers were inside. One shouted at me, 'Get out of the way!' They pulled me down the stairs and yanked my hair. They had guns. My son pleaded again, 'Mama, don't leave me.' He was hugging, referring to his wife. They dragged me out into the street and put me on a motorcycle. Some victims begged the direct perpetrators for their lives, as witnessed by their family members. Some victims spontaneously took off their clothes to show to the direct perpetrators that they were clean. The home, which was supposed to be a shelter of security for the direct victims, became the crime scenes of their brazen murder. The targeting of the victims in their own homes is explained by the Philippine National Police Command Memorandum Circular number 16-2016, which was earlier referred to also by the prosecution. It was issued on July 1, 2016, by the then Chief of the Philippine National Police, Ronald Bato de la Rosa, appointed by Mr. Duterte. The relevant portion of CMC 16-2016 states that, and I quote, "The actual house-to-house visitations of suspected drug personalities shall be the highlight of Project Tonghang." End of quote. Project Tonghang refers to Mr. Duterte's anti-drug campaign on barangay clearance operations. Ultimately, the murdered victims were now known in their close-knit communities with the stigmatized label of natokhang and as drug users, despite the lack of any judicial declaration. Third, the murdered victims of Mr. Duterte's anti-drug campaign were further dehumanized even after their death by the false narrative of Laban. After the actual murder, the murdered victims were falsely portrayed as Laban, that they allegedly fought back against the police despite being the helpless victims. After the murder, evidence of illegal drugs and/or paltik guns were even planted on the murdered victims as part of the modus operandi of the anti-drug campaign to allegedly show that the victims purportedly fought back. Thus, the murdered victims were not only known as natokhang and as drug users, they were also now known in their close-knit communities with the false label of Laban, or someone who fought back. But for the surviving family members of the murdered victims, the suffered harms do not end there. The extreme trauma brought by the sudden murder of the Tokhang victims was further carried over to their surviving family members. Some of the surviving family members were even imprisoned and charged with fabricated criminal complaints while they were still grappling with the trauma of the sudden attack and the murder of their loved ones. For the victim I earlier referred to, after her son was forcefully separated from them, she and her son's pregnant wife were both arrested and detained in a police precinct. While under detention, she was told to get her son from the morgue. But they were not actually released from detention. They were actually photographed with the foils and rocks handed to them, and afterwards they were charged with fabricated complaints relating to illegal drugs, as that victim narrates. And I quote, "While in detention, I learned that the same thing had happened to all the other detainees. Their stories were the same. It took more than a year before this victim was released from imprisonment. The illegal imprisonment of surviving family members was part of the modus operandi to prevent the indirect victims from filing criminal complaints against the direct perpetrators of Mr. Duterte's anti-drug campaign. Thus, the document containing the charges in paragraph 19 refers to, and I quote, other violent crimes under Article 7.1, end of quote. Further, as the homes of the murdered Tokhang victims were the homes of multiple generations, how the murdered victims were brutally shot at have been traumatically witnessed by their family members, by their spouse, their children, or by their parents. This extreme trauma is a daily struggle for the surviving family members as they still live every day in the scene of the crime, their homes. This extreme trauma of the surviving family members also occurs when they see or about to encounter a police officer, or worse, the direct perpetrator in their community. But the extreme trauma of the surviving victims does not end there. The surviving victims were socially stigmatized in their close-knit communities with the label, "Natukhang sila," or "May natukhang sa kanila," which loosely translated means they have a family member killed in a Tokhang operation. The surviving family members of the murdered victims were avoided and shunned in their close-knit community. The neighbors avoid the surviving family members, fearing for their own lives by reason of association with the murdered Tokhang victim. And the surviving family members usually mourn alone during the wake of their murdered loved ones. For some surviving family members who cannot endure this social isolation and continuing stigma, they eventually leave their close-knit community. The trauma and stigma are especially worse for the children of the murdered Tokhang victims. Aside from losing a parent, usually their father, who is the breadwinner, the children, as direct descendants of the murdered victims, were avoided at school or even bullied as the children of Natokhang. The children of the murdered Tokhang victims have to endure bullying, stigma, trauma, depression, and some even developed symptoms such as epilepsy. And because the murdered Tokhang victims were usually the breadwinners of their families, their death meant that their surviving family members were pushed toward further poverty. The surviving family members experienced extreme socio-economic dislocation with the murder of their breadwinner. Thus, Mr. Duterte's anti-drug campaign, aside from murdering victims from low-income communities, also brought about the breakdown of the families of the murdered victims. Mr. Duterte's anti-drug campaign destroyed the trust in the close-knit communities of the murdered Tokhang victims and ultimately destroyed the social fabric of these communities. Ultimately, Mr. Duterte's anti-drug campaign not only murdered people, but perpetrated state terror against low-income, marginalized communities across the Philippines. As a result, Mr. Duterte's anti-drug campaign shattered and terrorized these close-knit communities as a means of control. And ultimately, as the targeted victims of Mr. Duterte's drug war campaign were from marginalized, vulnerable communities, his drug war campaign was not really a war on drugs. It was a war against the poor. And the continued stigmatization of the indirect victims, the surviving family members, still persists until now. The children of the murdered victims are still suffering psychologically, mentally, and socio-economically. Their widowed mothers and their extended families, the grandparents, usually the grandmother, or aunts or uncles, also bear the burden of providing for the children of the murdered victims. And some surviving family members are still being visited or watched by the direct perpetrators to check on them. Last, what do these proceedings mean to the victims? The proceedings before this chamber are being watched intently by the victims because they see it as their first step towards the truth and towards justice. There is still a culture of denial that subsists even in the close-knit communities where the victims reside. The family members of the murdered victims still cannot openly discuss the murder of their loved ones in their close-knit communities. And some quarters supportive of Mr. Duterte even publicly claim that these murders under the drug war campaign allegedly never happened or were merely fake news or were justified as necessary. These hearings on the confirmation of charges are vital to the victims of Mr. Duterte's anti-drug campaign because it will be the first step for them in actualizing their right to the truth and to justice under international law. Madam President, Your Honors, the victims know that their murdered loved ones suffered under the charge of crimes against humanity for murder being charged against Mr. Duterte. Your Honors, the victims know, they have seen with their eyes, they have heard with their ears, and they have witnessed the barbarity of the murder wherein their loved ones' human dignity was never respected. Thus, the victims pray that this chamber confirm the charges for crimes against humanity for murder against Mr. Duterte for the sake of the truth and for the sake of justice for the victims, and so that the murderous legacy of Mr. Duterte's anti-drug campaign will not find new victims in the future. Madam President, Your Honors, thank you for your time and kind attention. This ends the submission of the common legal representative for victims. May it please the Chamber.
Judge Motok.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Mr. Andres. I gather that you have finished. So this second day of our hearings has come to an end. In accordance with our schedule, the hearing is suspended until Thursday, 26 February at 10 in the morning. Thank you, parties, participants, our interpreters, the registry, technical staff, and all those who have worked on this hearing and allowed it to be held. I wish you a pleasant day, and we will see you on Thursday. The hearing is adjourned.
Roman law-based law, and that is